2 minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
He's live. He's nationwide on CBS Sports Radio. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
Live from the Play Show Yet Not Overly Ostentatious studios of CBS Sports Radio here in beautiful New York City, sitting on top of the 10th floor of 345 Hudson Street. Welcome on in to a Tuesday edition of the Zach Gelb Show across all the great local CBS Sports Radio affiliates, Sirius XM, Channel 158, the free Odyssey app, and of course streaming on YouTube. 855-212-4CBS, number to jump on in, 855-212-4227. You could always get at me on Instagram, where I'm straight flexing, or via the good old cesspool of Twitter, at Zach Gelb. That's ZACHGELB. Whole lot to do today. Got Michael Samter, Stuart Kovacs, rocking and rolling with me all the way up until 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. We will be joined 20 minutes from now by the head coach of the Stanford football program, coming off their massive come-from-behind victory up against Colorado over the weekend, Troy Taylor. And we got a bunch of other things to sprinkle in as well. But first, let me start you off with the game last night to wrap up Week 6. And the Cowboys needed a win. They got the win. And I'm not saying that this makes us view the Cowboys any differently. I still view Dallas as a team that will compile a bunch of wins throughout the season. And then when push comes to shove and they get into the bigger games on their schedule or the bigger games in the postseason, you will see the team that is more similar to what we saw 2 weeks ago up against the San Francisco 49ers. So we will circle back to the Cowboys in just a bit. But the Chargers are one of the more disappointing teams in the NFL. And I can't say I'm surprised by the Chargers' inconsistencies because this has been what the Chargers have been all about for the last 20 years. But when I'm watching that game last night and I see all the talent they have on the offensive side of the ball, where you have Justin Herbert, you have Austin Eckler, you have a solid offensive line, you have Keenan Allen, Quentin Johnston, the rookie that they drafted out of TCU, the two tight ends as well. This is an offense, even though the Cowboys have a good, solid defense, that should be able to put up more than 17 points in the game last night. This is an offense that every game should be able to score bare minimum 3 touchdowns. And Brandon Staley is lost as a head coach. He should have not have been the coach entering this season. He was. And their big offseason acquisition was bringing in Kellen Moore. And I don't know if there's a more overrated coach in the league than Kellen Moore. Because Kellen Moore was supposed to be all that in Dallas. Kellen Moore was supposed to be a head coach, and then it doesn't work at the end in Dallas. And then his next job is an offensive coordinator with the Chargers, and he's walked into a really good situation. And if it wasn't just his name, Kellen Moore, I would be saying, why the heck is he the offensive coordinator of the Chargers, and what does he do really well? Because the two of them, Brandon Staley and Kellen Moore, are like Dumb and Dumber. And they should not be the head coach and the offensive coordinator for a roster that is loaded with talent in the Los Angeles Chargers. And the Chargers are not going to reach their full potential this year. The Chargers are continuing to be an inconsistent team, and they are extremely frustrating. So when I'm watching that last night, I kind of already waved the white flag, where I don't want to give the players a pass, because Herbert, for example, has to, I know they ended up getting a touchdown the next play, but when it's 3rd and goal, and you have Austin Eckler wide open, you can't wait. You can't hesitate. You can't take a second and a half to eventually throw the ball to Austin Eckler, because then the defender catches up to him and you get stopped just short of the end zone. Then they go for it on 4th and goal, and they hit the tight end for a touchdown. But you have these players for the Chargers that will get a pass because of who the coach and who the offensive coordinator is, and that's where we all gravitate to voice our frustration. But that offensive line did a phenomenal job for about 57, 56 minutes of the game last night. And then that final drive, Micah Parsons did what Planet players do, and that's show up in a big spot when you've been quiet for most of the game. And you also had Stephon Gilmore show up as well. But when you're paying your quarterback that much money and you are giving Justin Herbert a lucrative contract, I don't care who the defense is, bare minimum, you have to march the ball, matriculate the ball down the field, and bare minimum, get a field goal to send that game to overtime. And the Chargers couldn't even do that. So the Chargers are so frustrating. The players are going to continue to get a pass nationally because we all know Brandon Staley isn't that dude, and also Kellen Moore should not be the offensive coordinator of this team. So I started to think last night, because it is inevitable that at the end of the season, or you would hope, unless the Spanos family just continues to be cheap owners, you would hope that Brandon Staley is no longer the coach. Because when I just simply look at Brandon Staley's tenure, what does he do well? He builds good relationships with players. He does a good job in being consistent in terms of his teams are always not performing to the level they should be. And he does these boneheaded decisions where he's too aggressive. But through almost 3 years now of Brandon Staley, there's been so much negativity and there's been such an outcry that he isn't the guy. It's like, I can't even think of the really positive things that he does. Like, if you ask me what's 3 positive things about Brandon Staley, well, he's a defensive-minded guy. His defense stinks. And the offense, even with some offensive background that he has, with all the talent, they've not taken that next step forward. So the more and more I go through it, the only positive thing I could say about Brandon Staley is that it appears that the players like him. And then also, he got the team to the playoffs last year. But with this talent, I don't need a coach that, oh, my players like you because you're player friendly. And I don't need a coach that could just get you to the playoffs. I need a coach that could go win. I need a coach that could go uplift this franchise and take them to levels that they've never been before. Because whether you believe in the Chargers or not, it is a fact that this team is loaded with talent. And every year, even going back to Phillip Rivers, and now continuing here with Justin Herbert, and some of that has to go in the quarterback, I'm cognizant of that. You look at the Chargers and you expect them to charger. And it was almost as if it was the perfect matchup between the Chargers and the Cowboys, because you knew the Chargers were going to charger, and the Cowboys tried to choke that game away too last night with the muff punt that set up the Chargers right on the 20. That should be an easy touchdown. They had to wait till 4th and goal to get the ball in the end zone. And then Dallas almost didn't get the field goal lead. It's third down, and there's 2 penalties on the defense on 3rd and long. That's another part. You could have almost got off the field or set yourself up to get off the field. And eventually Dallas, I don't even want to say they moved the ball, but Dallas did get down the field a little bit, and they had to settle for a field goal. Now, Dak had Tony Pollard wide open. I know Pollard is smaller. He's not a receiver there. Being a running back, he may have got hit a little bit by Murray. That could have disrupted the timing. But you have a guy that's wide open. You got to make sure that that's a touchdown. And it wasn't. So then they had to kick the field goal. So that was like a seesaw ride last night where the Chargers chargered and the Cowboys did everything in their power to try to choke the game away and lose the game. But the biggest thought from that last night is it just once again reiterates that Brandon Staley, through 3 years of being the Chargers coach, is just not the guy. And the Los Angeles Chargers, after this season, have to get rid of Dumb and Dumber in Brandon Staley and also Kellen Moore. And you start to say, give me 3 names that could come in there and give me 3 names that could be the next coach of the Los Angeles Chargers. And number 1, Bill Belichick. Number 2, Jim Harbaugh. And the third name is Eric Bieniemy. And let's start with Belichick. Belichick should want out of New England. Belichick should look at Brady and say, Brady realized he wasn't going to win again in New England, and he joined the team in Tampa Bay that was more talented. Belichick constructed this roster in New England, and he knows this roster isn't good enough. They're heading to a top 5, top 10 pick of the draft. If I'm Belichick, I'm begging Robert Kraft to fire him, to trade him at the end of the year, and I want to go to Los Angeles Chargers. Because Belichick could still coach. I don't believe Belichick all of a sudden is this dog bleep coach. I don't buy that. If you give Bill Belichick Justin Herbert, Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler, Mike Williams when he comes back next year, Bosa, Khalil Mack, he'll have that team at 12 or 13 wins, competing for an AFC West crown and competing for a Super Bowl. There's no doubt about it. I just don't know how realistic it is to go get Bill Belichick. But it makes sense for the Chargers, and it makes sense for Bill. The question just becomes, will the Patriots allow it? And let's just say, if the Pats don't get rid of Belichick, and I want to see this thing through in New England because Belichick won 6 Super Bowls for them and saved the franchise. If the next call isn't Jim Harbaugh, and I don't know if Harbaugh's definitely leaving Michigan, but there is that pending issue with the NCAA where he had to sit out, self-imposed by the university, a 3-game suspension this year, and they tried to agree to a 4-game suspension. The NCAA, the Committee of Infractions, wanted him to admit that he lied to them over some like cheeseburger nonsense, and Harbaugh wouldn't do it. So you would think that bare minimum, another game, if not 2 more games, are coming on Jim Harbaugh for a suspension. And I know it's been talked about with the contract, and maybe they're going to get a long-term extension done soon between the Wolverines and Jim Harbaugh. But I could see Jim Harbaugh maybe win a national championship this year and saying, I don't want to deal with the nonsense and the petulant behavior of the NCAA, and going right back to the NFL where he still has that itch of, I was so close when I was the coach of the 49ers, where in 4 years I went to 3 NFC title games and also went to a Super Bowl where I lost to my brother in John Harbaugh. So those are the 2 names that the Chargers have to circle. And they at least have to try to take a swing. Because the worst thing that you could hear from Belichick or that you could hear from Jim Harbaugh is no. There's no harm in trying to allure Belichick and Harbaugh to join the Chargers. But if you can't get those 2, you have to give a call to Eric Bieniemy, who's done a nice job with the Commanders, who have good talent, but not great talent, and he knows the heck out of the Kansas City Chiefs, who everyone's chasing in the NFL, and you're chasing inside your own division in the AFC West. And not only that, he's deserving of an opportunity, and I believe he's someone that is the opposite of Brandon Staley. And that's what you need. You need someone that is the complete antithesis of Brandon Staley, where Brandon Staley's all about like, oh, thanks for showing up to work. We love you. Here's a participation trophy. Oh, I'm always going to say nice, positive things about you. Bieniemy, what was the one criticism he received? where Ron Rivera threw him under the bus, which was ridiculous right before the start of the season. Oh, he's too tough on the players. Yeah, because that's something that should matter in the NFL. If that's a legit criticism of a coach, it says more about your players than the actual coach. And I'm not saying you need a dictator in the NFL now. I'm not saying you need a my way or the highway guy, but you need a coach that has the respect of the locker room, and you need a coach that can really put his foot down and make it clear that this is his team and we're going about things one way. And whatever happened with the last coach clearly held you guys back, and now we need to thrive and now we need to soar. Because once they make that change at the end of the year with Brandon Staley, the new coach is going to be under pressure. But whoever they bring in, the players now are no longer going to be let off the hook because attention's going to start to be drawn to Justin Herbert. They paid you all this money. You have all this talent, and you're not winning enough games. So that game last night, it was frustrating on both sides. If you're a Cowboys fan, you wipe the sweat off your head and you go, whew, thank God for surviving that one and winning that one, because if you would have been 3-3 after 6 games, it would have been a catastrophe for Cowboys fans today. And on the other side, if you're a Chargers fan, for all like 9 of you that exist, you're sitting back and you're saying, another wasted season, another year where we have to deal with this guy, Brandon Staley, who's just not fit right now to be an NFL head coach, and we're going to continue to be let down, and we're going to continue to get disappointed. So Chargers fans, instead of just voicing your frustration today, instead of just saying how annoyed you are with Brandon Staley, start compiling a list and have your list of 3 names that you want coaching this team next year. Number 1 should be Belichick. Number 2 should be Jim Harbaugh. And if you can't get those 2, I would be jumping up and down if I was a Chargers fan, like a fat kid in a candy store, if I could get Eric Bieniemy. One of those 3 guys have to be the head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers next year. It is the Zach Gelb Show right here on CBS Sports Radio, off and running on a very busy Tuesday edition of the show. We'll come on back and we'll chat it up with the head coach of the Stanford football team. They were down 29-0 to the Colorado Buffaloes last week, and they found a way to come on back and stun Coach Prime, Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter, and the Colorado Buffaloes. We chatted up with Coach Troy Taylor when the Zach Gelb Show continues in 5 minutes.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 2 minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
The Zach Gelb Show is on the air across the nation on CBS Sports Radio. Here's Zach Gelb.
We continue. This is the Zach Gelb Show, coast to coast on CBS Sports Radio. We'll be chatting it up in a few moments with the head coach at Stanford, in Troy Taylor, after their crazy come-from-behind victory over the weekend up against Colorado. They were trailing the Buffaloes 29-0 at half, and then they won that classic in overtime, 46-43. Some breaking news, though, right now in the NFL, according to Adam Schefter. 7-time Pro Bowl wide receiver Julio Jones is signing a one-year deal with the Philadelphia Eagles. Per sources, Jones will be reunited with his former Tennessee teammate and A.J. Brown, who pushed for Tennessee to trade for him from Atlanta. So Julio Jones, I don't know how much gas he has left in the tank, but he's on his way to Philadelphia. And Philadelphia is one of those teams that they're in the penthouse right now, kind of similar to where the Dolphins are, where you don't need to add another wide receiver. And we all know what Julio Jones has accomplished in his career, and it pales in comparison, right? When you talk about Chase Claypool, we know he's not nearly as accomplished as what Julio Jones has done, but you kind of look at the Eagles, they don't need to go and pull the trigger on Julio Jones. The Dolphins didn't need to pull the trigger on Chase Claypool, but there are players that still have some talent left, and I think it's a low risk and potential high reward, and another body in that building for Tua Tagovailoa and Jalen Hurts is never something that I think is a bad thing. But let's talk about that crazy come-from-behind victory over the weekend. 29-0 down at halftime, and Stanford ends up winning the game in a wild affair in overtime. And now joining us is the head football coach at Stanford, in Troy Taylor. Coach, first off, congratulations. What a win that was for your program. Appreciate you doing this, and how you been?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
So let me start you off. When you're down 29-0 at halftime, and then you have that comeback, and then you go into the locker room after the game, and you had a second or two to process it, just what's going through your mind and what was a wild victory for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I call plays, so I'm pretty in the moment throughout the entire game in terms of, adjusting what you're doing schematically, time management, all those things. And then you get into overtime, obviously, and then you set up for the field goal. And I had a pretty good idea he would make it. Josh Carty's an incredible kicker. And then when the ball goes through, I always check for flags first. And then and then after that, it hits you. It's like, wow, we really pulled this off. And then you allow yourself to celebrate, and you're really happy just watching your players enjoy it so much. And then you know, embrace a few people. My son Noah was there and gave me a hug, and then going to the locker room, and they want to celebrate. So my message was really quick, and then we kind of had to do some other stuff, some media stuff, but it was fun. It was an incredible experience. One of those games, I told the guys, you know, I've played in a lot of games, I've coached in a lot of games, and they have and will. That is one that we'll remember forever for sure.
Just naturally going into that game, everyone's going to talk about what Coach Prime is building at Colorado, and this is your first year as a head coach at Stanford, and you're trying to build that trust, build those relationships with your players. You know, not everyone, coach, could be Sonny Dykes and go to a national championship game in year one with the new program. A win like this, does it build a little bit more trust and camaraderie inside the locker room?
Yeah, I think so. You know, one of the things about our guys that I've been really impressed with is their resiliency and their focus from week to week. You know, we had some tough losses that could have went our way. And I was really worried early on, you know, because we just got here in December. So we're learning about our team and our guys. I was really worried about them going in the tank and losing some of their spark. And it just never happened with our guys. So I stopped worried about them. And they were resilient throughout the entire year. They come ready to go at the beginning of the week and really focused and then compete. So for these guys, I tell them all the time, they're an inspiration to me, how they prepare, how they go about their business. Our scout team guys, they give so much detail and effort. It's really an incredible group of young men. And so really happy that they were able to see, you know, a lot of times you get in those games and you come back and, you know, you fall a little bit short. And so there's, you know, whatever the moral victory, or you're happy that your guys competed. But they got rewarded with a win there, and to finalize it in that way is pretty special.
Being down 29-0 at halftime, as Troy Taylor is here with us, what did you sense from your guys in the locker room at the half, and what was the vibe like when you guys went to the locker room?
Yeah, I mean, disappointed. Everybody's very disappointed, me included. And so talked with our, you know, we split off offense, defense, talked to our coaches, and my message to the team was everybody thinks it's, you know, like I read Rudyard Kipling's If or something at halftime and did something inspirational. I really didn't. I said, hey, that wasn't very good first half. We're going to see how we compete in the second half. And that was it, really. We went out. They were very focused. There was no bickering. There was no finger pointing. There was nobody yelling, you know, come on, or any of those ridiculous things. They were intent and focused. And then we got to stop early on. You know, Colorado got the ball to start the second half, and they went for it on fourth down. We got to stop, got the ball in a short field, and then we were able to score. So right from the beginning of the second half, we had a little bit of hope, and it all started with our defense, you know, giving us field position, getting off the field quickly.
And it's simple. To have a comeback like that, you need players to be historical. When you're down 29-0, your wide receiver did that. When he scores a 97-yard touchdown, I thought that would be his best play of the game. But then in overtime, I still don't know how he reeled in that catch, Coach. That was insane.
He is, you know, Alec Imanor. He's a really talented kid, and he's young and inexperienced. Hadn't played a ton of football, you know, and we knew he had it in him. You know, earlier in the game, if you probably remember, Zach, he had a wide open touchdown. Then he kind of misplayed the ball and didn't come down with it. A lot of guys will go in the tank. He did not. I don't think he caught a ball in the first half. He did all his damage in the second half. And the catch in overtime, you know, I've seen many times guys try and pin the ball in the back of a defender, but it almost always comes out. So we had a great angle. It was right there on our sideline. And, you know, the expectation of him being able to hold on to it throughout that was very low. And then I'm like, holy smokes, he hung on to it. So that was an incredible play.
Seeing Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter and coaching up against them, just what were the impressions with that lethal combination that's now back together after the unfortunate Travis Hunter injury?
Yeah, I mean, Shedeur, the quarterback, is really talented. I have a lot of respect for him. Really tough, determined. He's great at the end of the games. He just seems to be the same guy. He's really carried them at the end of the games, which, you know, you want your quarterback to do. And then, their skill guys they're all good. I mean, Hunter, he's an exceptional player. I know, people were giving him a bad time for the one-on-ones, but he was exceptional at wide receiver. I mean, he really had an incredible game. So they're a talented team. Coach Sanders is doing a great job of getting that city and really the college football world excited. He's brought in some good players and some good coaches, and they're going to be good for a while.
With the future of the Pac-12, we know everyone's leaving right now, and it's a shame to me because I look at the conference, and you guys right now are the best conference in college football this season. Navigating those waters this year, taking over a new spot in the tradition that Stanford has, just how do you kind of reflect on what this has been like with all the uncertainty in college football with the changes?
Yeah, there is a lot of irony that it's probably the best conference in the country this year, and it's the last year. I'm really disappointed. I'm sad that the conference is coming to an end. Now I grew up in California and watched the Pac-10 and then played in it and then became the Pac-12, and a lot of great players, a lot of great teams, a lot of great coaches. Really sad to see it end. And that being said, we're really in the moment. Our schedule is so difficult. Each week, we're pretty focused on the now. We're very grateful that we landed a spot in the ACC. We think it's a great fit. It's a great conference. It's our recruiting blueprint, our footprint up the coast. Our guys are a lot of them from California, but most are on that East Coast, starting up top and going down to Florida. And so for us, we think it's really in our wheelhouse. It's going to be great. We're recruiting really well, and I think it will only get better. The fact that we can promise our guys that we're recruiting out there that they're going to be around the area probably 3 games a year.
How do you reel your team back in after the emotions of a game like that? It's a great thing to have where you get a big signature win, but there's a game next week against another really good team with a good coach in Chip Kelly and top 25 UCLA. What have you sensed so far early through the week from your players?
Yeah, our guys have been the same. Our message really is the same. A win or a loss is to move on, to enjoy it. But to be mindful. We're grateful it happened, but we're moving on to the next game, and it just so happens it's a really well-coached team and a really good football team. So our mentality doesn't change. Obviously, I think winning gives you a little bit more energy, a little bit more positive energy. But our guys, as I said, is the thing that's impressed me the most is they've been the same guys no matter what's happened. I can count on them coming in and doing their thing and being focused and get excited about competing against a really good UCLA team.
Coach Troy Taylor, I have an idea for you. I don't know what he's doing right now, but I keep on seeing Andrew Luck on the sideline supporting his alma mater. Can we get him on the coaching staff here?
We would love to get him involved as a coach. Andrew is, obviously I admired him from afar. And then once I don't know how much interaction you had with him, but he's one of the humblest, nicest people you'll ever meet. And he's been nothing but supportive. He comes to the game, he's encouraging, he knows all of our players. After the game, he stood outside the locker room and congratulated every one of them that came out.
Awesome.
He's one of the most unique, best people that I've ever been around. And the more we can have him involved in our program, the better.
Last thing I'll ask you, Coach Troy Taylor, after that incredible victory up against Colorado, being down 29-0 at halftime and winning the game in overtime. You've gone up now against Caleb Williams this year, Bo Nix as well, and then you just saw Shedeur Sanders. Who was the toughest quarterback that you guys had to prepare for this season?
Yeah, that's a great question. They're all great, obviously. They're all a little bit different. I would say Caleb is probably the most difficult. I think what separates him from guys that I've seen in the past, he's really difficult to get on the ground. You think of some of the great quarterbacks that have played in the NFL. They're just hard to get on the ground. And part of it is his quickness. He's a lot stronger than you would think. He keeps his eyes downfield. And then when trouble comes, you better have him boxed in with a couple of people or he's going to get outside. So obviously Notre Dame did a, I didn't see the game, but I saw they were able to do that. I don't know how they did it, but he's pretty special. But they're all 3 of those guys, Bo and Shedeur, obviously have a lot of respect. I think they're all really tough. They're really competitive, and they got a huge skill set. And the kid from Washington, and there's so many great quarterbacks in this conference, which makes it so difficult.
How about your quarterback too? We all talk about all the other quarterbacks in the Pac-12 and how loaded it is from top to bottom. But how about Ashton Daniels? Because he put up nearly 400 yards of passing and 4 touchdowns and didn't throw an interception and led you guys in rushing the other night.
Yeah, thanks, Zach. Yeah, he played really well. He's we've been playing 2 guys, Ash obviously, and then Justin Lamson is another one. So they've been great for us. It's tough. It's the toughest position in sports, and if you're not always protected well, it makes it even more difficult. And we're getting better and are protecting our quarterback. But these guys they've been tenacious and really good, and really happy for Ashton and how he played Friday night at Colorado. He made some big plays, avoided a lot of sacks. And then Justin Lamson had a number of big runs for us. So it's really a team effort, and I love both those guys.
Were you dancing in the locker room after the game?
I'm not. I grew up in the '80s, so break dancing and on a piece of cardboard and all that. I don't think anybody would appreciate it. So
be pretty good for the TikTok account, I'll tell you that.
Good. That is not my goal, but you're right. It would be pretty good on TikTok.
Well, keep on piling up those victories, Coach. It was an insane performance on Saturday night. We appreciate you giving us a few minutes today.
Zach, thanks for having me. Go Card.
You got it. There he is, the head coach at Stanford, Troy Taylor, after that crazy victory up against Colorado. I wonder how many people here on the East Coast at 29-0 said, I'm going to go to bed, and they wake up the next morning, and they're like, holy smokes, what the heck happened with Stanford? Ack is raising his hand. Stu is raising his hand. And Samter as well. I thought you guys were believers here of Coach Prime. Oh, I guess you were believing. You said, the game's over. It's 29-0. I'm going to bed. And Troy Taylor went all Lee Corso. Not so fast, my friend. Oh, what a performance that was. And you know what? Can I make it a mission too? Saturday night, saw it was 29-0. Yeah. I went to bed as well. Yeah, I went to bed on Friday and said, that game's over. Definitely over. So what a performance. Appreciate Coach joining us. We'll take a break. We'll come on back. The Brock Bowers injury, how does it affect the rest of college football? And there's one conference that has more pressure on them to win it all this year than any other conference. Let's get the latest CBS Sports Radio update in with the Ackman, Rich Ackerman.
CBS Sports Radio. Sports Flash.
And it's sponsored by Progressive Insurance. Progressive makes bundling easy and affordable. Get a multi-policy discount by combining your motorcycle, RV, boat, ATV, and more. All your protection in one place. Bundle and save at Progressive.com. Julio Jones is not done yet. The 7-time Pro Bowler is back in the NFL, signing with the Eagles, joining their practice squad. The Rockets' rebuild will continue without Kevin Porter Jr., who's reportedly been dealt to Oklahoma City with 2 future second-round picks. In return, Houston receives Victor Oladipo and Jeremiah Robinson-Earl. The Thunder are immediately waiving Porter. The Phillies were the hot team last year, winning the National League pennant, and now 3 wins away from another. They'll host the Diamondbacks of Game 2 of the NLCS after grabbing the opener, jumping on Zach Gallen early with a pair of solo home runs in the first, and they never looked back to hand Arizona its first postseason loss. Aaron Nola will take the mound tonight, trying to build on that series opening win. He'll go up against 12-game winner Merrill Kelly, who actually grew up a Phillies fan. I'm Rich Ackerman.
Hey, it's Amy Lawrence. Be sure to listen to CBS Sports Radio at home. Just ask Alexa to play CBS Sports Radio.
CBS Sports Radio.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining.
4 minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Now back to the Zach Gelb Show.
The Detroit Lions are a bona fide Super Bowl contender. In the offseason, it was okay. Philadelphia, San Francisco, the two best teams in the NFC. Is there going to be a third team that emerges? And through the first 6 weeks of the season, the Detroit Lions may be the most impressive team in football because they sit at 5-1, and their only loss was in overtime to the Seattle Seahawks. And I think people need to start saying Jared Goff is a good quarterback.
Here's Zach Gelb.
The Defensive Player of the Week is sponsored by the Navy Federal Credit Union, who proudly serves the Armed Forces, DoD veterans and their families. Their members are the mission. Learn more at NavyFederal.org. This week's player is Vikings linebacker Jordan Hicks. in Sunday's 19-13 win over the Bears. Hicks had 10 tackles, an interception, and a critical 42-yard scoop and score in the third quarter. So 2 football notes. We told you right before we brought on Coach Taylor that the Eagles have signed Julio Jones, and this is from Mia O'Brien, who covers the Jacksonville Jaguars. Remember, the Jaguars play the Saints on Thursday Night Football. Towards the end of the Jaguars' victory up against the Colts, Trevor Lawrence did sustain a knee injury, and it's very ambiguous about the status of Trevor Lawrence, where it's not a serious injury, but when you have a knee injury and he's the franchise quarterback for your team and you have a short turnaround going from Sunday to a game on Thursday, there's a lot of questions on if you're going to have Trevor Lawrence play in the game. Trevor Lawrence said to Mia O'Brien that I've been fortunate to not have any serious injuries, but I pride myself on being a guy who plays through injury, pain, whatever it is. Lawrence says he's optimistic that he'll be able to play to kick off Week 7 with the Jacksonville Jaguars going up against the New Orleans Saints. Talking about injuries, Brock Bowers, we know, got surgery, going to be out 4 to 6 weeks. We kind of discussed it yesterday on Brock Bowers, who is the best tight end in the country, arguably could be the best player in the country that is not a quarterback, and he's already won 2 national championships, lined up to come back for the final regular season game, which the opponent's irrelevant, so you could come back for the SEC championship game. And I'm kind of the thinking that if I was advising Brock Bowers, sure, Brock, you get to make the decision ultimately. If you want to come back and you want to play and you want to be there for your teammates because you're such a dominant player for them, I respect that. I would not tell you to do otherwise. But with that being said, I do actually think the right decision for Brock Bowers is thanks, Georgia. Love you. I've given you everything I can. And if there's any hiccups in this recovery or if he's not 100%, I'm not playing if I'm Brock Bowers. That would be me. That would be me personally. But sometimes what is the right thing from a dollars and cents perspective isn't always what makes sense for the player. Because from a money standpoint, you already got your NIL money. You've already won 2 championships. You've already cemented yourself as the first tight end that's going to be off the board come the draft in April, where the draft's going to be in Detroit. And there's really not an incentive for you to return outside of just pride, outside of just wanting to be a good competitive player and do right by your teammates. And financially, you have money coming your way because you're going to be a top 10 draft pick. I got to make sure that my body is 100% right before I step foot on that football field. But now with the status of Brock Bowers unknown, because you could say he's going to be out 4 to 6 weeks, how many times is there a hiccup in the recovery process? My immediate thought is the Big Ten better win the national championship this year. Because Georgia is still that team. Georgia is still loaded. Georgia can still win a national championship without Brock Bowers. But with that being said, you look at the Big Ten. I don't think the Big Ten from top to bottom is the best conference in college football. They're top heavy. They are really top heavy. But they are not as well rounded as the Pac-12. We have so many good teams, and those Pac-12 teams are going to beat up on one another. And I hope the team that wins the Pac-12 at the end of the year has only 1 loss so they could get into the college football playoff. Because we've never seen a team have 2 losses in the era of 4 for the college football playoff get in to the college football playoff. So you have like Washington or Oregon or USC or Utah, whoever the team is, with 2 losses as the Pac-12 champ. I still think they should get in, but since we've never seen a 2-loss champ get in before, or a 2-loss team get in before, I can't sit here and tell you it's a guarantee. But I look at the Big Ten, and I don't think 2 teams from one conference are going to be able to get in this year like we've seen in other years with the SEC and we saw last year with the Big Ten. But if there's any conference in the nation that has a possibility of getting 2 teams in the in the college football playoff this year, it is the Big Ten. I know you have a big game this weekend, noon on Fox. You have Ohio State going up against Penn State. So one of those teams are going to lose this weekend. But whether it's Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State, whoever the team is that wins the Big Ten championship, we all know they're getting in because that team, at most, will have one loss, if not be undefeated. But then you could have a similar situation occurs that we saw last year where you're on a collision course of Ohio State being undefeated, Michigan being undefeated. They played in the game in the horseshoe in Ohio State. Michigan beat Ohio State. Michigan gets in because they go on to win the Big Ten championship game. And then a lot of other chaos occurred, and Ohio State didn't play another game. But since they only had one loss and it was to Michigan, who was in the college football playoff, that propels and elevates Ohio State back into the picture last year. So if any conference, and I don't think it's going to happen this year just because of how many good teams we have, not great teams, but good teams in college football, if there's any conference that has a chance to get two teams in the CFP this year, it is the Big Ten. But with that being said, just getting in isn't good enough. Because Michigan, if they get in, their goal is to win a national championship. And I do think Michigan's the best team in the Big Ten. That's not being disrespectful to Ohio State. That's not being disrespectful to Penn State. Ohio State, McCord's done some nice things. We know they have the two wonderful wide receivers. We'll see how the battle of the trenches looks this year for Ohio State when they go up against Michigan with how lopsided it's been the last 2 years. And you look at Penn State, this is a big test for Penn State this weekend. Because the biggest problem with James Franklin, when you examine the James Franklin era at Penn State, he has not been able to beat the top 10 teams. I got to double check and see what his record is, but it's like 2-16 or 3-16, maybe 3-15, something like that, going up against top 10 teams. And now this is supposed to be, right, the year for Penn State, where all the Nittany Lions fans that are a part of that cult in Happy Valley, they're saying this is the year we got a team that's just as good as Ohio State, just as good as Michigan. Well, with the way that the Big Ten is structured this year, and I'll give credit to Ohio State, at least they had Notre Dame on the schedule. But Michigan has 2 games. It's Penn State, Ohio State. Ohio State has 3 games. Notre Dame, which they were lucky to survive, but they won. They play Penn State this weekend and Michigan Thanksgiving weekend. And, like, you go through it and you look at these games. For Penn State, you got a bare minimum split. Obviously, you want to win both. But for Penn State, you need to either beat Ohio State this weekend, or you need to, if you lose, beat Michigan then. I believe that game is November 11th in Happy Valley. Because if you go 0-2 against the only 2 legitimate opponents, the 2 teams that strike fear in anyone else in the nation, and you go 0-2, it's like, James Franklin, what are we doing here? Just to get 2 losses on the season and dress up all these wins like they actually mean something, it would be the most unimpressive 2-loss team that I've ever seen in college football, what that schedule is. But you look inside, whoever is the one team, and I think it will only be one, that gets to the college football playoff this year, with how top-heavy the Big Ten is, just getting there, showing up and losing the semifinals is not going to be good enough. You need to win the 2 games this year in the college football playoff. And Michigan, last 2 years, they got there. And a lot of people thought they would never get there with Harbaugh. And in year 1, they got blown out by Georgia, is what it is. Last year, disgraceful performance up against TCU. For Ohio State, I know a lot of people put Ryan Day on blast. He only has 6 losses in his career as the head coach of Ohio State. But when 2 of those losses come to Michigan, and Urban Meyer, or should I say Urban Liar, has never lost to Michigan, it's going to be a lot of blowback directed towards Ryan Day. And for Ryan Day, if you get in, I know last year you did a nice job in kind of fixing the perception of you as a coach showing up against Georgia and your kid just missed a kick right at New Year's. But you have a team that could win a national championship this year. You just got to get in. And for Penn State, I don't think they're a national championship team. But if they get in, it's either one of 2 ways. It's because they split against Michigan and Ohio State, and someone else in another conference crumbled, and with 1 loss non-conference champ they're in, or you have a situation where maybe Penn State does the unexpected, and they beat Ohio State this weekend, and they followed up in a few weeks, and they beat the snot out of Michigan, and the next thing you know, they're the team that gets into the college football playoff. And if Penn State gets into the college football playoff, even though I don't think they're a national championship team now, if they get into the college football playoff after beating Ohio State and Michigan, then the expectation is to win a national title. So for so many years, it's been the SEC, Clemson, And it was, been Ohio State when Urban Meyer was there. Who could win a national championship? For the Big Ten this year, anything short of winning a national championship is unacceptable. Because I know Alabama's not out of it yet, but I do think Alabama will get another loss this year. The only team that really strikes fear in you out of the SEC this season is Georgia. And Georgia has their questions. Florida State, we know, is a heck of a team inside the ACC. They still got to get there. They still got to outlast UNC, with Drake May, is undefeated right now, and they just got their big wide receiver, Tez Walker, back. And then whoever comes out of the Pac-12, if they only have a loss and they're in the college football playoff, they're going to be a tough team as well. But with all that being said, you see the way that those three teams are built. And I order it before the season started. I think Michigan's the best team in the Big Ten. Ohio State and Penn State are close. A few weeks ago, I said Penn State was better than Ohio State. This week of the game, I kind of feel like Ohio State is going to win the game. So I give the slight edge to Ohio State over Penn State. But whoever is the last team standing there in the Big Ten, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You got to go make this the Big Ten year because college football is open right now. And the Big Ten the last years has teams that have been very close, right? Even in a national championship game. And they've come up short over and over again since the last time Ohio State won a national championship. All righty, Zach Gelb here with you on CBS Sports Radio. We'll take a break. When we come on back, time is running out for Justin Fields in Chicago, and it's unfortunate. What does his future look like? Because I believe Justin Fields could be a player in this league. I just don't think it will be for the Chicago Bears. Off and running, hour number 1 in the books on this very busy Tuesday edition of the Zach Gelb Show. Coming on back, 855-212-4CBS, 855-212-4227.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. 1 minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
He's live. He's nationwide on CBS Sports Radio. This is the Zach Gelb Show.
All righty, hour number 2 of our radio program. That's right, it is the Zach Gelb Show. Welcome on in on this Tuesday right here on CBS Sports Radio. The Chicago Bears quarterback Justin Fields is running out of time. And it's unfortunate because if you ask me, do I believe Justin Fields could play in the NFL and be a good quarterback? I do think he can be one day a good quarterback in the NFL. But you look at two things. Right now in the current, he has an injury, a dislocated thumb. It's expected he's going to miss this weekend up against Stu's Raiders. So maybe the Raiders are actually going to be 4-3, which would be crazy after 7 weeks of the season. And he could potentially miss more games than that, than just that one game. When you also see the environment, the Bears, I believe, have failed Justin Fields more so than Justin Fields has failed the Bears. Now, that doesn't mean Justin Fields doesn't have room to improve and Justin Fields just gets a free pass for some of the shortcomings, but the Bears are where quarterbacks go to just like die, it feels like. The Bears quarterback situation historically has been dreadful. Where if you look back to the summer, remember when Justin Fields said, I'm going to become the first 4,000-yard passer in the history of the Chicago Bears, and it's going to happen this season. And while I admire that confidence, and I respect him saying that because to uplift an entire organization, an entire franchise, and an entire city, you got to have somebody lead. You got to have somebody that has confidence and that shows up to work with an exuberant attitude and kind of a bold and cocky attitude as well, because this is a league of alphas, right? This is a league of lions when you look in the NFL. And for Justin Fields, I thought this going into the season that he was being set up to fail this year because there were some people on ESPN saying, oh, he's a dark horse candidate. I think it was Greeny to be MVP. And I'm like, what the heck is Greeny smoking? I know Greeny's a Jet fan. Is he doing some ayahuasca with Aaron Rodgers? And then you had the Fields comments himself where I go, even though 4,000 yards seems pretty easy now in the year of 2023 in the NFL, it's not easy if you're the quarterback of the Chicago Bears. And also, when you look at the way that Justin Fields plays, there's a lot of running that goes into his game where if he's throwing the ball to get 4,000 yards passing to hit that threshold, you're then taking away a good amount of times that you could be running. And while long-term, that may be the best thing for Justin Fields. It was never going to be the case in the short term because Justin Fields running the football, elite, really strong. Throwing the football, there's some good moments, and then there's a lot of moments where you go, he has work to do. But you see the Bears, they've had a dreadful offensive line in a short tenure with the franchise. They now have DJ Moore, and I'll give him credit. 2 out of the last 3 weeks, they've looked good as an offense, and it's unfortunate timing with the injury. But they were starting to get going in that Broncos game that they choked, and then the Commanders game was a big statement for them in an isolated window in that Thursday night Amazon Prime spot, and then last week it was ugly. So I look at the Bears, and I look at Justin Fields. If he was given a few more years, and if they invested in that offensive line, if they got him another weapon outside of DJ Moore, if they got a right head coach, if they got the right general manager, then yeah, I do believe that it could eventually work. But you know what happens? Organizations change, and there's a constant cycle here. And most likely at the end of the year, we are trending in the direction that probably Ryan Poles is going to be out of a job as the general manager after 2 years. And Matt Eberflus, after 2 years, is going to be out of a job as a head coach because you look at where the Bears are positioned, they still have a long ways to go. And I mean a long ways to go. But their draft picks are going to be excellent draft capital and excellent draft positioning because they have their own first-round pick, which just for starters is going to be in the top 5. And then you have the Carolina Panthers pick, which after 6 weeks of football, it is as clear could be with how many bad teams there are, like the Giants and like the Patriots and like the Broncos and like the Chicago Bears. There is no worse team, and there is not a team in football now that is more uninspiring than the Carolina Panthers. And that's with the Panthers putting up 14 points, getting right out of the gate to a 14-0 start up against the lethal Miami Dolphins, and then allowing 35 points unanswered, and you end up getting your doors blown off in that game. But the Panthers stink. The Panthers are a garbage football team. The Panthers are painful to watch. I do a weekly interview every Friday. I jump on one of our affiliates, WFNZ in Charlotte, on Mac and Bones show. And every Friday, they kind of apologize to me. They say, Zach, we appreciate you doing the hit every week, but the football season, and they said this in September. It wasn't even the end of September, and they were already saying the season's over. And they're not wrong, because you look at the Panthers right now, and we'll talk about the Panthers in a little bit later in the show, but their line stinks. You know, Adam Thielen's still solid, but he's not a number 1 wide receiver in the NFL anymore, even though he's having a solid year. And there's no players on the offensive side of the ball that make you go, ooh, like, look at the Carolina Panthers. They can at least have some hope for the future. And Bryce Young, I believe, can be a good quarterback, but I do believe he's going to get messed up by the Carolina Panthers. So the Bears have the Panthers pick from the Bryce Young trade in the draft. So the Bears right now are positioned to be 1 and 2 in the draft. Now, I don't know if that's going to be the way at the end of the year. The Panthers will definitely get them the number 1 overall pick. Maybe the Bears win another game or 2, and that pushes them down to like 3, 4, or 5. But the Bears are a lock to have 2 picks in the top 5. And if you have 2 picks in the top 5, and let's just for argument's sake say you don't get number 1. Well, let's say, I don't know, I'll give some team a bone. It won't be your team, Stu, because you guys have too many wins. But I want to try to like pump up Stu a little bit and give Stu some hope, because Stu looks down in the dumps even with this football team being 3-3 and maybe on their way to being 4-3. So maybe this is teasing Stu and this is backfiring. This isn't a good thing because then I'm allowing Stu to envision life with Caleb Williams. But let's just say we live in this fake world where you have Caleb Williams to the Raiders. And that's how it ends up happening. Maybe Josh McDaniels does something crazy at the draft and he trades up to the number 1 overall pick. And you do not have the Chicago Bears in a spot to draft Caleb Williams. You're telling me through a scouting process where Ryan Poles didn't draft, well, he won't even be the GM next year, but even if he was, or whoever you bring in, you go through an entire scouting process for someone that didn't draft Justin Fields, and you're telling me they're not going to fall in love with one of these other quarterbacks? If it's a Michael Penix Jr., if it's a Drake May, Shedeur Sanders, if he does not go back to Colorado, whoever that guy may be, of course, you're going to go through the process and say, the rookie quarterback contract of Justin Fields is coming to an end soon. I don't feel comfortable paying him elite quarterback money, and he doesn't deserve that right now. And you're going to reset the time clock of the organization. You're going to, with a new coach most likely and a new GM coming in, do a restart. And then latch on to some of the pieces that they have in the organization right now, one of them being DJ Moore, and then also having those 2 draft picks. So Justin Fields, he'll have another chapter. He'll have another era, but it's going to be somewhere else because time is running out for him in Chicago. And it's unfortunate, right when he finally starts to play well, and there starts to be moments where you're like, okay, I could actually tune into the Bears. I could actually watch the Bears and see if there's some development, see if there's some growth from Justin Fields. He now has this injury, and he's expected to miss at least 1 week, if not more than that. So for Fields' future, because it makes sense for the Bears, use your 2 first-round picks, get a quarterback, get another talented player, get a new coach, get a new GM, have them build to the future with DJ Moore as well, and then also get back some capital for Justin Fields. Because there's going to be another offensive coordinator, another head coach in this league that looks in Justin Fields and says, wow, the Bears messed up. It happens all the time. Josh Rosen, that 1 year when he was in Arizona, and then the Cardinals said they had to go get Kyler Murray. The Dolphins said, yeah, we'll give up a second-round pick to go get Josh Rosen. We could fix him. The Carolina Panthers with Sam Darnold. They said, oh, we could go fix Sam Darnold with the Jets. What may be, and I don't want to say that Justin Fields is garbage because he's not, but what may be one team's trash could be another team's potential gold. And there will be teams in a quarterback-starved league that say, I could fix Justin Fields. Because there's logical reasons to think you could fix Justin Fields. And also, the easiest slam dunk argument of them all is that every quarterback the Bears take, they end up ruining. Or they don't end up having success with. So you could look at the Bears and say, man, it was more of what they did rather than what Justin Fields did. So here are some teams. And I'll start off with one of them being inside their own division in the North. If Kirk Cousins is donezo at the end of this year with the Minnesota Vikings, now I don't know if the new Bears regime is going to want to trade him in division, but imagine just from a speed perspective, Justin Jefferson and Addison with Justin Fields. That seems like Madden. That seems like a lot of fun. I don't know if it will work, but it's a better landing spot for Justin Fields in Minnesota than where he's currently at in Chicago. However, that's probably unlikely because there has to be a scale if you're Chicago where you don't want to get burned where Fields ends up being this next great quarterback and you gave him away for only a second-round pick. So whatever a team like the next team I'll bring up is the Falcons offer, I don't know if it has to be double, but it has to be more than what a team that isn't in your division would offer. And Atlanta would be a good destination too. And I've said this before on this show. Desmond Ridder right now is probably trending in the direction of not being the guy for the Atlanta Falcons. Arthur Smith thinks this guy is like the greatest quarterback of all time, though. Because the coaching over the weekend by Arthur Smith, how many times are you going to allow your young quarterback to throw the ball when you should be a run-first team with Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier? And Ridder did a bad job managing the game. You got to take a timeout there on 3rd and goal at the 2, but the coach has to take a timeout as well. So the Falcons roster has a lot of talent with Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier, Kyle Pitts, and then also Drake London. You need a quarterback. And if you're a Falcons fan, you may say, I don't know if I want Fields because you just went with another young quarterback. Maybe you want someone that's more solidified. But no one actually thinks Desmond Ridder has a ceiling to be a great quarterback in this league. It wasn't that long ago that we were talking about Justin Fields having that ceiling of being a really damn talented quarterback in the NFL. I also don't think it would hurt the Broncos to take a flyer on Justin Fields. Now, I do believe that Sean Payton's preference would be to draft a quarterback. But if you only have to give up, let's say, like a 2nd or a 3rd round pick for Justin Fields, I think it's worth it. Because Sean knows Russell Wilson is no longer the answer. And whether there needs to be a guy to bridge the gap until you get your next answer, I believe Fields has enough upside where maybe Fields turns out to be like Jared Goff. Where when the Lions make that move, I know there was more pieces to it because they got 2 first-round draft picks and they traded Stafford to the Rams, and there was a lot more complexities with that deal. But no one in Detroit thought Jared Goff was going to be the guy, and now Jared Goff is the guy. So you look at the Broncos, they may not look at Justin Fields as if he will definitely be their guy, and maybe Sean doesn't have the time as he thought he did to kick the tires on a potential project. But if you don't have to give up a ton of big draft capital, and we know that organization is giving a ton of draft capital up anyway, and they've been able to survive where the Sean pick is coming to an end this year and the Russell deal has already been completed and what the return was for it, I don't believe the Broncos are a bad spot. Few more teams here that could land Justin Fields. The Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm not ready to say Kenny Pickett isn't that dude yet, but I haven't seen enough from Kenny Pickett to make me say he is absolutely that guy. And it's very young. You're a year and a few games in, and he didn't even start from the beginning last year because the Steelers did that idiotic thing starting Mitch Trubisky for the first few games of the season. But you see the Steelers, they have some talent with Pickens. And, you know, I look at a team like the Steelers, if you walk away from this season and say, I'm like in the middle on Kenny Pickett. I don't know what if, if he could succeed. I do believe that a guy like Fields has a higher upside than Kenny Pickett. And then the final 2 teams that I'll give you. Tennessee's going to need a quarterback after this year. Because Ryan Tannehill isn't it, and his time's coming to an end, and now he just suffered an injury, back-to-back seasons in Tennessee. I don't know what direction that team is moving, because Tennessee keeps on trying to make it as if they could still contend. But the last 2-3 years, you don't go into the season saying, oh, wow, I expect Tennessee to be a lethal team. But then they're aggressive, getting DeAndre Hopkins, not trading away Derrick Henry. They made that stupid decision, which they really waved the white flag on that team's chances of potentially ever getting back to a Super Bowl by trading A.J. Brown and restarting it with Treylon Burks, which is a dumb decision at the time. But they're going to need a new quarterback. And you cannot be trotting out Ryan Tannehill next year. I don't think Will Levis is the guy. I don't think Malik Willis is the guy as well. And Justin Fields would instantly become the best quarterback on that roster. And here's just like a curveball that I'll throw at you. Where I think this player is a solid player. He's a good player. No one would have thought we'd ever be talking about him starting a few years ago in 2023 and getting rewarded with the contract. But if we continue to see up and down play from Geno Smith, where they're like once again a 9-8 team, and Geno Smith was a comeback player of the year last year. A lot of people wrote him off, but he did not write back, and he told everyone about that. But if you see Geno regress, and Geno looks more like the Geno we got to see up against a good defense with Lou Anarumo's Cincinnati Bengals, I know they just paid him. And I know they also have Drew Lock on the roster, and like the only one that likes Drew Lock is Pete Carroll. But if Fields is going to like a backup role, or, and I do think he could land in a spot where he could start, I don't think it's the end of the world if you're Seattle to give up like a second-round pick to go get the services of Justin Fields, because he could be your next guy in a team that's loaded with offensive talent when you have DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and you just drafted, I know his career hasn't been a super success so far, but you just drafted Jackson Smith and Jigba, who I had high expectations coming out of the Ohio State, plus the 2 running backs in Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. So Fields' time is coming to a close. It's unfortunate in Chicago, but the timing is right where they're going to move on this season. I give you a few teams, the Vikings, the Falcons, the Broncos, Steelers, Tennessee, and Seattle. Who's the team that you could see landing the services this offseason of Justin Fields? 855-212-4CBS, 855-212-4227. We'll take a break. When we come on back, we'll update you on some of the biggest stories in the world of sports with some audio. We call that segment The News Brief.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. 3 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Now back to the Zach Gelb Show.
If you need more proof that Jimbo Fisher should be fired, and Jimbo Fisher is the most overrated coach in the country, I don't know what more proof you need than the last 2 weeks. The only reason he still has a job is because of the $70 million buyout. But if you're a fan of A&M, that passionate fan base, you got to be demanding, you got to be imploring the boosters to pay and buy him out at the end of the year. Because the last 2 years, he's had really good rosters, and he's had really bad results.
Here's Zach Gelb.
This portion of the show is brought to you by Wesley Financial. Stuck in a timeshare and want out? Contact Wesley Financial Group now and get a free timeshare exit information kit at wesleyfinancialgroup.com. Time to get to a news brief.
Extra, extra, read all about it. Extra, extra, read all about it.
Time for your daily news brief. We get you caught up on the rumors, reports, and reconnaissance from the day in sports.
Let's go to Billy O'Brien, who was asked about his quarterback for now, Mac Jones.
Bill, sorry if you were asked this earlier, but is it your expectation that Mac will start this weekend?
Yeah, yes.
That was short. That was really short. Like, yeah. That wasn't really that believable, though. Like, Samter, if I ask you, is your expectation that we're going to hang out this weekend? Yeah. And you go, yeah. It's not really convincing, is what I'm saying. I believe Mac will be the starter this weekend for the Patriots, but I do think we are inching to the territory, and he's been pulled 2 times this year, where eventually they're going to go to somebody else. And it's all about the timing of the schedule, too. This weekend, they play the Bills. That's a 40-13 game if I've ever seen one coming. And that game is at one Patriot Place, too. And the following week, they play the Miami Dolphins. And the Patriots actually played the Dolphins somewhat tight, at least for the first 30 minutes the last time those two teams went up in week 2. That's going to be another game where they lose like 45-13. After that week, they then play the Commanders. They're not going to Bailey Zappi. I know the fans were happy for Zappi last year, but the team at one point waived him this offseason. Right before right as they were trimming down the roster to 53 names. Malik Cunningham gave you some explosive moments in the preseason, and you also need a quarterback that can make plays, that could be mobile. I do think by the end of the year, we will see one game of Malik Cunningham, if not multiple games, where he's at least given the opportunity to start. Let's go to Robert Saleh. He was on Good Morning Football earlier this AM on the NFL Network, and Robert Saleh was asked about Aaron Rodgers' rehab and his comeback from the Achilles injury.
What he's doing, according to them, is absolutely ridiculous. For him to be walking already, I wouldn't put anything past him. He is willing himself to return faster than what you're supposed to be. It's amazing. I think he's fueled by doubt. I know he's fueled by doubt. The more you doubt him, the more fuel he has, and he's on a mission. And there's one thing I've learned about him is that when he has something on his mind and he wants to prove something, he's gonna prove it. So a lot of people can doubt him. I'm not doubting him. We're leaving the door open for him, but it's amazing to see how hard he's been working and the intent at which he's been doing it.
So I appreciate the hard work of Aaron Rodgers. I appreciate him wanting to come back this year. But you could believe and you could think and you could speak it into the universe that you're going to come back. And then it's also going to be, is your body physically ready to return? And if you return too soon, can you do further damage to your body that could impact next season? And I know that people have talked about the special surgery that he got and the quick road to recovery. We're talking about a guy that got hurt 30-something days ago, though, still. It's still very, very early in this process. It's remarkable to see him walking around. It's remarkable to see him on the field before the game, throwing the football, and not using crutches on the field. But what is the pain like after you do those small things, and what is it like behind the scenes? I'm still going to sit here, and I'm not going on a limb when I say this. I'm going to sit here and say we don't see Rodgers again this year. But if we do see Rodgers again, is he actually ready? Or is this Aaron Rodgers saying, I'm the great Aaron Rodgers, bleep you, I have positive thoughts right now, and I'm not going to listen to some doctors and what people have done in the past, and I'm going to show everyone that they're wrong and that I could just do this just for the sake of doing it, and that may not be the right thing. It's his body. God bless him. Do what you want. But until I see him back on the field taking a hit, yeah, I'm still going to believe that we won't see Rodgers until 2024. And I don't mean like January of 2024. I mean next year at the start of the 2024 regular season. Here is Aaron Rodgers on being on the headset during the Eagles game when he was on the sideline for the Jets, courtesy of the Pat McAfee Show.
I like helping out. So I was on the headset every game in the preseason. I think the coaches appreciate it. Listen, I don't think I had a major impact on the game. Maybe calmed some people's nerves. Maybe a couple thoughts I threw out, might have gotten taken into account and made their way into the call. But for me, it was all the parts of feeling a little bit more normal, feeling like I was a part of it, feeling like I was back.
So I like how Rodgers is there, and I like how Rodgers is contributing to however he can contribute to the team considering the injury. But when he said calming some nerves, who is that directed to? Is that to the head coach, Robert Saleh, who's like jacked up all the time? Is that to his BFF, Nathaniel Hackett, or is that to Zach Wilson? Samter, if you had to take a guess, you used to be a Jet fan. Now you're like, oh, go Chiefs, and you're doing all that lame crap. If you had to get into the cabeza of Aaron Rodgers when he says he's trying to calm somebody's nerves, is that Saleh, is that Hackett, or is that Zach Wilson when he's on the headset?
I think it's all of it. Later on in the interview, he discussed how while he was on the headset, there's a lot of voices all talking to Hackett and to Wilson throughout the game. And so he kind of serves as that calming voice for the process. So I don't think he's specifically talking about Wilson or Hackett. I think he's just saying the process sometimes gets out of control, and he's the calming voice to bring it all down.
So basically what you're saying is he's like the binky to a baby in this role, where you have Hackett, you have Saleh, you have Zach Wilson. They may all be crying, or they may be all at a different level of energy. And, right, you have a young child now, right? 9 or 10 months old daughter, correct?
10-month-old daughter.
And sometimes you're like, oh, we need the child to be a little bit quiet, to calm down. So you get the binky out. Rodgers is basically the binky to Saleh, to Hackett, and to Zach Wilson.
I think that's his new nickname, Aaron the Binky Rodgers.
I don't think he would like that all that much. Let's get a little check around the room. Stu, yes or no? You a fan of Dan Campbell?
Big fan of Dan Campbell.
Samter, you ready to bite off some kneecaps for Dan Campbell?
I always liked Dan Campbell, but I didn't think that his brand and his style would ever actually work. I thought he'd be fun for a little bit. The fact that it's actually turned around a franchise, I've always liked his personality and liked his approach, but now seeing that it's actually working is shocking to me. But yes, huge fan.
He was an acquired taste for me. I'll admit it. When I first heard Dan Campbell, I was similar to Samter, where it's not like I was like, bleep Dan Campbell, I don't like this guy. I thought his shtick would eventually get old very soon, and he just gave me major college coaches vibes, where I thought he'd be this great rah-rah coach inside the Big Ten, never in the NFL. But Dan Campbell has shut everybody up. Dan Campbell now has a dominant football team. Dan Campbell now has a team that could be playing in the Super Bowl this year, and I don't think that's far-fetched. Where you look at this Lions team, there's not a lot of flaws outside of just not having that experience. Like, the offensive line is good, led by Penei Sewell. They got to get healthy at the running back spot with Montgomery and Gibbs. Jared Goff's been better than anyone thought he could ever be in Detroit. You got 2 good wide receivers, and Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams will develop into one. Sam Laporta's a really good young tight end in this league. And defensively, you're led by Aiden Hutchinson and Alex Anzalone. They got a damn good football team, and they got a confident football team as well. So I give a lot of credit to Dan Campbell. With that being said, though, we go around the room. Stu likes Dan Campbell. Samter now loves Dan Campbell. I now am a big fan of Dan Campbell as well. Aaron Rodgers, to no surprise, because whenever everyone's on one side, there's always got to be one contrarian. Aaron Rodgers loves to play that role in the Pat McAfee show, and he admit he's not the biggest fan of Dan Campbell.
Yeah, I have some mixed thoughts over the years. Whoa! He followed one of my all-time favorite coaches in Miami, Joe Philbin, and there were some things said during that time which I felt like were not the classiest stuff. I think there's a way of following the coaches where you don't have to slam the previous guy in order to make yourself feel better.
So, from all accounts, Joe Philbin seems like a really good man. But just because you're a really good man doesn't mean that you're a phenomenal head coach. And Joe Philbin, when he was with the Miami Dolphins, his highlights were being 8-8. That's not good. So when you're taking over for someone, and Philbin was fired in right after week 4, you got to change things up a bit. Now, I don't know if Campbell slammed him publicly. I don't know if he pulled a Sean Payton to Nathaniel Hackett. If that was the case, then there's some wrong in that. But it's almost as if, I know that Philbin is a favorite of Rodgers, and Rodgers loves him, but it doesn't mean that what Dan Campbell was saying in the moment was necessarily wrong, because you never know what opportunities you're going to get. And when you get an interim opportunity, you got to take that baton and run with it, because it could be a job audition right there in the moment, or years later when people think you're ready to become a head coach in this league. Here is Dak Prescott on the failed tush push in the game last night.
I didn't push my tush enough. No, just didn't get it, honestly. Just didn't get it. Wish we did. Obviously, that would turn into more points, but yeah, let's get a new name for that.
Stu, do you think they should ban the tush push? Just wondering.
I do not. I think teams will adjust eventually, and it'll be a play that teams use, but it won't be a play that is so successful like it is for the Eagles.
Samter, are you anti-tush push here? Are you anti-tush push?
No, I love it.
Here's the thing. I'm not against the tush push, but I do find it funny that you have so many people that look at the Eagles and go, this thing should be banned. But then all these other teams run it, and it seems like they can't replicate the success that the Eagles have. So there has to be some skill to the tush push, and we all know the Eagles have this dominant offensive line. But we're just talking about pushing your quarterback for a yard, and Jalen Hurts is a really strong guy, so that has to play a role into it as well. But it's amazing. All these other teams run it, and they don't have nearly as close to the success as the Philadelphia Eagles have. Here is Teddy Bruschi on his hopes for Bill Belichick. This was courtesy of ESPN.
I want him to coach his ass off this season and get, was he get 6, 7 wins, all right? Have them playing respectable by the end of the season and walk away. That's what I want my former coach to do. Shula doesn't matter. You've got multiple Super Bowls over Shula. You're a better coach.
So I heard that whole thing, and Teddy Bruschi did go on to say, at this point, Bill's just coaching for himself, right, with the Shula record. He knows the Bill Belichick that he knew was all about winning championships and the success of the team. I have no problem, and I think that record means a lot to Bill, but at what cost? Because the legacy talk is ridiculous. Like, people that get on shows today and are like, oh, Bill Belichick is nothing without Tom Brady. Bill Belichick is a terrible coach. You're an idiot. Because for 20 years, and I'm a Patriot fan, how many times did I hear people say, oh, it's all Belichick and Brady's just a product of the system? So now it's just the flavor because Bill's been bad to just slam Bill and make it worse than what it actually is on his legacy. Bill needed Brady. Brady needed Bill to get to 6 titles. Do I believe Bill could have gone somewhere and won on his own? Yes. Do I think Brady could have gone somewhere and won on his own? Yes, we've seen that. But to get to a dynasty, to get to 20 years of greatness, to get to 6 championships, they both needed each other. I don't think that's a bad take by Teddy Bruschi, but I would take it one step further. Not retire, go somewhere else. If I'm Bill Belichick, do what Brady did a few years ago. Go identify a team that needs you. Go identify a team that has a head start with a lot of talent. Brady identified the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It resulted in a Super Bowl. Go look at the Los Angeles Chargers. Brandon Staley, not ready. Kellen Moore, not a good offensive coordinator right now. If I'm Belichick, I'm saying, Kraft, trade me to the Chargers or fire me, whatever. Just get me out of this deal and go to the Chargers and see if you go get one final Super Bowl before you hang him up. Let's go to Warren Sapp on the rumors that John Gruden could be joining Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh if they fire Matt Canada and make Gruden the offensive coordinator.
I can't even say what John said. Can't even say what John said. No, Mike T said, I don't know who writes this stuff, Warren. I said, yeah, all right, boom. He's going to watch his kid play football down at Ivy League school. So John and me are scheduling a golf outing this weekend. So it's creamsicle week in Tampa. So trust me, no. He's not going.
Now, not that Warren Sapp is the end-all be-all, but clearly they had a conversation, Warren Sapp and John Gruden. I always had a tough time when this report came out 2 weeks ago, seeing John Gruden back on an NFL sideline and being an offensive coordinator, not a head coach. I don't think he should be a head coach again in the NFL. I don't think he will be a head coach again in the NFL. But you have to check your ego if you want to be an OC, and I don't think Gruden would be able to do that, even though he is addicted to the game of football. Let's hear a Notre Dame fan running on the field after Notre Dame beat USC, and a Notre Dame fan went right to Caleb Williams to get the social media moment.
We did it! Let me see those nails down, bro! Let me see those nails down, bro! Come on! Ah! We did it! We did it! We finished! We did it! We did it! Ah!
You know, 2 things here. It's kind of crazy, and I'm not against storming the field, but it's crazy how quickly the fan can get to the player now. There should be some buffer period where it's like, USC, don't shake hands with Notre Dame, just quickly get you off the field, and then we'll allow the fans to storm the field. Now, I know the universities will never allow the fans to storm the field because they get fined, but I don't think I would have the cojones, if I was a fan, at that age as a student, to run up to the player and be like, you paint your nails, And you know what? If the player, and I know we saw this a few weeks ago, ended up punching the fan back, you kind of get what you deserve. Alrighty, let me play one more. Here is Trevor May, who announced his retirement. I think this was on a Twitch stream, his own Twitch stream, and then he rips the A's owner in his retirement speech.
To the A's organization and every single person part of it, I love all of you, except for one guy. And we all know who that guy is. Sell the team, dude. Just sell it, man. Let someone who actually takes pride in the things they own something. There's actually people who give a shit about the game. Let them do it. Take mommy and daddy's money somewhere else. It is what it is. Reality is you got handed everything you have, and now you're too soft to sit and stand in front or take any responsibility for anything you're doing.
Good job there by Trevor May. Now, I always say this about John Fisher. I understand why you would want to move the team from Oakland to Vegas. I get that. But just because I understand why you would want to do that doesn't mean that other people have to like it. And I do like how Trevor May didn't even mention the owner by name. He's just like, oh, that guy that made all of his money from his mommy and his daddy and got handed everything. That's a good rip job there by Trevor May. All righty, we'll come on back. It is the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. Update time first. Here he is, the Ackman, Rich Ackerman.
CBS Sports Radio. Sports Flash.
Well, the Eagles had added some depth to the wide receiver position, and it's a future Hall of Famer signing 7-time Pro Bowler Julio Jones to their practice squad, while Colts nose tackle Grover Stewart has been suspended by the NFL for 6 games for violating the league's policy on performance-enhancing drugs. The Phillies cooled off the red-hot Diamondbacks, handing Arizona its first postseason loss. Game 2 will be tonight after the Phils used a familiar theme to take Game 1. Kyle Schwarber led off with a home run. 2 batters later, Bryce Harper celebrated his 31st birthday with a blast of his own. The 2-time MVP said it's a good start, but only a start. There's a lot more left in this series.
That's the great thing about baseball, and it's a great thing about our sport that we play. Anything can happen in any spot, so we just got to keep playing our game, worried about us, and understand they're not going to lay down. They're not going to do anything different. They're going to be the Arizona Diamondbacks like they have been all year, and we just got to play our game and understand that.
The Rockets are reportedly sending Kevin Porter Jr. to the Oklahoma City Thunder with a pair of second-round picks for Victor Oladipo and Jeremiah Robinson-Earl, and the Thunder are immediately going to release Porter. I'm Rich Ackerman.
Jim Rome here. Coming up Wednesday in the Jungle, a conversation with Pacers head coach Rick Carlisle. See you Wednesday at 12 noon Eastern and 9 Pacific.
CBS Sports Radio.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. 2 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
He's live. He's nationwide on CBS Sports Radio.
I had no expectations for the Patriots heading into this season other than not making the playoffs. I was not a believer in this Patriot team. But why I'm waving the flag is they need to move on from Mac Jones at the end of this season. I still don't believe Bill Belichick is going to get fired. I still think when you win 6 Super Bowls and how close him and Robert Kraft are, that Bill Belichick will be afforded another opportunity next season.
This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
Well, that was quick in Carolina. Thomas Brown is now going to be the offensive play caller as Frank Reich has given up those duties. And that makes me say one thing. Why was Frank Reich hired to be the head football coach of this team? And Frank Reich is a well-respected name in the NFL. Frank Reich, I think, is starting to show you that he was more of a good offensive coordinator and a guy that wasn't a disaster as a head coach, but he's not someone that I need to hire as a head football coach in the year of 2023. And this is not revisionist history. This is not, oh, let me dance on a grown man's grave when things aren't going well and they're winless through the first 6 weeks of the season. I never understood the Frank Reich hire when the Panthers brought him in during the offseason. I know usually when teams make hires and when it was so bad in the previous tenure of the coach that they try to go the complete opposite. So they go from a college coach to a guy that's been an NFL lifer and a guy that is considered to be, right, like a grown adult in the NFL and a well-respected name in the NFL. But a lot of times the guys that are well-respected in the NFL and that everyone likes don't always turn out to be and pan out to be these great head coaches. And the last 2 years in Carolina, or the last 2 years in Indianapolis, I saw a Frank Reich team that was constantly unprepared, A Frank Reich team that in their strongest positional group on the offensive line regress. A Frank Reich team that could never go into Jacksonville and get the job done. And a Frank Reich team that got owned by the Tennessee Titans. And last year, this is the most damaging stat. Frank Reich, where if you don't have a good team, you would think, okay, a head coach could script some plays and could get a team to show up in the first 30 minutes. He was outscored last year in Indianapolis, 118-42 in just the first 30 minutes of football games. He never had a lead at halftime before he got fired in season by the Indianapolis Colts. And the Panthers, with their dopey owner in David Tepper, says, yeah, I need the guy that couldn't win in Jacksonville, that had just terrible performances up against Tennessee, and the last 2 years constantly never had his team prepared for games. That's who they hired. And it's like, okay, if you hire him, you're hiring him because you have the number 1 overall pick, and I know they eventually moved up, but you were looking to go get your long-term quarterback. And you think he's the quarterback whisperer, he's the offensive guru, and after 6 games you say, yeah, we got to change the play calling. So it's like, what is Frank Reich there to do? What is Frank Reich doing really well? What is going to be the things at the end of the year where if you're David Tepper, you say, I need to see more of Frank Reich. Like, we know what Frank Reich is. He's a good guy. He's a really good offensive coordinator when he doesn't have head coaching duties. But as a head coach, he's mediocre. He's not someone that I need to have. Like, he's not a disaster, but he's never going to be great. I do think Frank Reich is going to be back as the head coach next year for the Carolina Panthers, but I think he's on the hot seat. And I would be stunned if they turn it around enough where after the 2024 season wraps up, that David Tepper, who has so many problems that are led by his own incompetence, says, oh, yeah, I got to bring Frank Reich back for another season. And I got to bring him back for a 3rd year. I have a tough time believing that. And you know the Panthers will be aggressive this offseason. You know they're going to go get more talent for Bryce Young because they got to go save Bryce Young right now. But a few years into a tenure, a few years into a job, you're already giving up play calling duties. I go back to it, and I said this at the time when they hired Frank Reich. I said it's a very underwhelming hire. And if they couldn't go get a big name, a name that would be inspiring, a name that would make me believe, they should have just kept what was working. And they should have ripped the interim tag off of Steve Wilkes, because Steve Wilkes did a heck of a job for the Panthers down the stretch last year, gave them a shot to go win that terrible division, and they should have just continued to rock and roll with something that was working in Steve Wilkes. But instead, you didn't get a big name, you didn't get the right coach, and now you bring in Frank Reich, that's a big name in NFL circles, and is a nice guy and a guy that a lot of people like, but he's never been this super-duper successful head coach, and that's what the Panthers need. 855-212-4CBS, 855-212-4227. Let's go to Jay in Nashville next up on CBS Sports Radio. Jay, what's happening?
Hey, I recall me, you, and Perloff. It was the day Maggie had to take off, and you had a feeling for Maggie. It was like right before the draft. I was walking around Costco, and we were talking about this. And I remember you guys put me on the spot. I was trying to argue, like, look, no, they need to take Bryce. And I remember you in particular was like, look, you know what type of quarterback Frank Reich likes. Who do you think, like, just after everything you just said, who do you think is the most logical decision here? I had to say C.J. Stroud, which he was, and it looking like that C.J. Stroud would have been the better option in this situation.
And you know what, Jay? That's the best defense people could have of Frank Reich. If you want to talk about his tenure so far, because to Frank Reich's credit, from what a lot of people have said, including Adam Schefter, he wanted C.J. Stroud, and it was the dopey owner that wanted Bryce Young. And personally, to be fair, I like Bryce Young better than C.J. Stroud, but so far through the tenure, it hasn't even been close. C.J. Stroud's been the better quarterback.
Yeah, it's not that he's not better than C.J. Stroud. It's just, look, I watched the play. The only time I've seen Bryce play this year, I watched the play where he barely got, like, one of the defensive linemen already was double-teamed. All he did was reach a hand out and just slap him in the back. It was almost like a horse collar, but it was just from that heavy hand, it made Bryce fold up like a pretzel. It was like, I saw that, I was like, oh, my God. And it's like, if that's barely if a hand swipe or a club to the back of the neck is taking them down like that, they need to sit him for the rest of the year till they get somebody or get a lot. Because I was saying that when we were talking, like, dude, I wouldn't draft him if you can't protect him.
Hey, Jay, I got to let you run because we're up against it, but appreciate the phone call. Good stuff. Always great to hear from you. That's the one defense of Frank Reich, is that he wanted C.J. Stroud, but the owner stepped in. And that shows you how much of a disaster David Tepper is. I used this analogy last week. David Tepper's the guy that never cooked a meal in his life, owns a restaurant, and tells the chef of 20 years, yeah, I'm going to cook the chicken parm tonight. Not going to be good chicken parm.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. 45 seconds remaining. Seconds remaining. Seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
He's live. He's nationwide on CBS Sports Radio. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
Yo, hour number 3 of our radio program. That's right. It is the Zach Gelb Show, coast to coast on CBS Sports Radio. Just reading this from Adam Schefter, some San Francisco 49ers news. None of the injuries to 49ers standouts, Christian McCaffrey dealing with an oblique, Deebo Samuel with the shoulder, and Trent Williams dealing with an ankle are considered long-term per sources. Each has a chance to be ready for Monday night's game at Minnesota, though the work week will help determine who could play and who can't. I think this is very simple. And I understand this knowing that the San Francisco 49ers just dropped the game to the Cleveland Browns. But the Browns actually have some talent. You look at the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings don't intimidate anybody. Kirk Cousins is a solid quarterback, a good quarterback, not a great quarterback. Addison's a good young wide receiver. But really, other than that, and with Justin Jefferson now being out with this hamstring injury and on the IR, there's not enough pieces for the Minnesota Vikings, especially with the defense that played better, but it was also up against the Bears, but a defense that has not been good the last few years, even though they just brought in a new defensive coordinator in Brian Flores. That makes me think I need to rush anybody if I'm Kyle Shanahan. I would go out to venture to say one of the three or two of the three end up playing. I would be surprised if all three end up playing. I do think there's importance in trying to get Trent Williams back. And I don't believe you need to play McCaffrey or you need to play Deebo Samuel. For the 49ers, you got to preserve Christian McCaffrey. You got to make sure that Christian McCaffrey is healthy come playoff time. And I know he was healthy last year, but historically in his career, he's been hurt a lot. And we know the type of force Deebo Samuel could be when he's all there mentally and also all there physically, because Deebo's dealt with injuries last year and now bleeding over into this season. And 2 years ago, he was dominant. And last year, he took a massive step back. And he even said it. He said that he was horrible last year. Like, he turned on the tape. He told me this. He turned on the tape and he watched film with Kyle Shanahan in the offseason, and he couldn't believe what he was putting on the film and putting on the tape. I think they could survive this week without McCaffrey, and they could survive this week without Deebo Samuel. Without Trent Williams, that's tough, though, because Williams is that great still, even at his age, with what he's able to do week in and week out on a football field. But this is a marathon, not a sprint. Don't be rushing guys back if you're the 49ers, because I know you don't want to ever overlook an opponent, but you should be able, even if you have your JV team and you don't have all the varsity guys starting, you should be able to take down the Minnesota Vikings this week. So before I get back to the Cowboys, I actually have a big airline topic here. So I'm off tomorrow. I'm going to Florida. I will be doing the show Thursday and Friday right here in this time slot of 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern, noon to 3 p.m. Pacific. But I'm going to learn a lot here, learning with this new crew of Samter and Stu, who I've known for a while but don't work on a day in and day out basis with up until recently. When we fly in a plane, aisle seat, middle seat, or window seat, what is the preference of one Stuart Kovacs?
Definitely the window seat one. The aisle seat is next, and the middle is just the worst.
No one likes the middle.
No,
now
it's hard
I'm a
to
big
like the middle.
guy, so if I'm in the middle, I feel bad for the person to my left and the person to my right. I was once on a flight. This must have been 4 or 5 months ago. So that's me not really knowing how long it was, but it wasn't like that short ago, but it was pretty long ago. So I'll say, 4 or 5 months. And I think I got rerouted where I had to go through Detroit. From Detroit back to New York, they stuck me in the middle. And you know what it was? It was coming back from the draft from Kansas City.
Oh, that's right. Maybe
That's
you got
what
stuck.
it was.
Yeah.
When I got stuck and stranded, everyone else from the company got back on their flight. Zach Gelb had to wait 9 hours in the airport. Then they canceled the flight. I had to spend an extra night in Kansas City, go stuff my fat face once again at Jack Stacks and get those Fired Kiss wings and the burnt ends and the baked beans and the cheesy corn and got another carrot cake, cupcake. Of course I did because I was all annoyed and I watched the Ranger game and I had tickets for Game 6 and I was annoyed because I lost money on that. And that little weasel, Brian Jack McKeon, he ended up getting my tickets and didn't pay me full price. So that was a disaster. And then they didn't want me to fly out until later the next night. And then I started tweeting away. And then the airlines direct messaged me and they go, we get you a connecting flight and leave 6 a.m. in the morning. And I had to transfer and land in Detroit from Kansas City and then go from Detroit to New York. And that was the best way of getting home because my parents were moving and I had to assist my parents on the move. Wanted to be a good son. I need to get back on that Sunday as early as possible. So they put me in the middle and I felt so bad for the person to the left and I felt so bad for the person to my right. So you are a window guy first.
Yes.
Is what you're telling me.
I don't like relying on if I'm in the aisle seat, that's two people that have to get up and go to the bathroom once or twice, and then I'm getting up. I just like being by the window. Leave me alone for the 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hours, and I'll see you when we land.
Now, if you're on like an international flight and it's 7, 8 hours, would that change?
I've never been, so maybe that would change, but I think the window is still for me to preference.
Because I got long legs since I'm 6'4", so I enjoy the aisle where I could stretch the legs out a little bit, at least get one leg out into the aisle, and then the cart person comes by and they always hit me and they run over my leg and it's a disaster. Santer, I feel like you're very particular with the airlines. When Tiki Barber doesn't get you upgraded to the first class, are you a window guy, a middle guy, or are you a aisle guy?
Not only does Tiki not get me upgraded, but when I would fly with him, he would actually intentionally force me to sit in the back so that I can be as far away from everybody as possible.
That's actually false, because I did Instagram stalk you the other night because I realized you weren't following me until we started working together, and I was going down the rabbit hole of Big Mike CBS's Instagram account, and one of the first posts I saw was big thanks to Tiki Barber for upgrading me to business class. The good treat of working with Tiki Barber, an NFL legend. That was a post that you guys had.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Actually.
You looked really young, by the way, too. Not that you look old and decrepit now. That didn't come out the right way. But you looked like a child. Now you have this big burly beard. You look like you were like 13. In this photo.
That's what 8 years of working with Tiki will be. No, he was
maybe
awesome.
more so BT.
Yeah, he was awesome. I'm definitely an aisle guy, but it has nothing to do with my size because I can sit literally in a box and I can sit in the overhead compartment and I'd be fine. To be honest with you, I just like the aisle. I like that space. I like to have one person next to me and then just freedom and space. When you're up against the window, you kind of feel like you're trapped in there. And I understand Stu's mentality of I don't want to worry about people walking over me to get to the bathroom. But the worst is when you're in the window seat and you have to be the one to keep getting up and go to the bathroom or whatever else, especially in a long flight. It is so annoying to have to ask people if they're napping or taking a nap. I don't mind it. I really don't care. I just like to have some space and freedom. You're always the first one that the people with the carts talk to, right? So, they come in, you're thirsty, you're hungry. They come to you first, and then they worry about everybody else. So, aisle 100%. Now, I was just reading real quick.
Well, this is why. Is it on United? Is this the
yes.
whole? That's why I'm bringing it up.
Okay.
Don't ruin the surprise
All
here,
right,
Samter. Samter's about to kill the segment right here because I took a little stab at Samter saying he looked young about 6, 7 years ago.
No, I didn't know this is where you were going. I thought you were going to talk to me about some specific flight that you're going on.
So to answer the question, I am an aisle guy because I like to stretch my legs out. And also, I would feel really bad, like Samter's saying, if I'm on the window and I have to go to the bathroom, and let's say you have someone snoring on the aisle, and I have to wake them up and nudge them to make sure that they get out of the seat so I could go do my business in the bathroom. I don't think I would have the guts, even if I had to really go, to wake up that person while they're while they're snoring on the plane. So I'm just reading this on United, which I am flying tomorrow. They have announced a new boarding policy in an effort to make boarding a plane more efficient, which whenever you go to an airport, boarding the plane is the worst thing ever because they should board, in my opinion, the back first and then the front of the plane. But because if you're in the front of the plane, you pay more money and you're first class, business class, whatever, emergency exit, they board you first because you're paying more. So it's a total disaster. So what United is now doing is starting on October 26th, people with window seats, so Stu, in the economy section, notice how they say not first class, not business, but in the economy section, will board first. This will be followed by those with middle seats and finally those with aisle seats. So, Samter, this doesn't really apply to Stu, but this applies to us aisle guys. You would think we would stick together. Even though I like the aisle seat better, there's nothing worse than when you get to the gate and let's say you don't pay to check your bag and you go, oh, I did a good job condensing everything and I'm taking a smaller bag with me, and you get right off the plane and then you could just go right through the terminal and get to your destination. When you have someone saying, sir, you need to, that bag, there's no overhead space. We're going to have to make it go under the plane and you'll get it at Carousel 43 in Fort Lauderdale Airport. There's nothing worse than that. And it kind of makes you go back to, who was it? It was Ben Stiller. What was the name of the movie with the Fockers and everything?
Oh, Meet the Parents.
Meet the Parents, where he has the bag after the bag got lost and then he's on the airplane. And then he says a word that you're not ever allowed to say on an airplane because then, like, the worst thing happens, obviously. When he goes, I just want to keep my bag. And they go, so you can't keep the bag? And then he goes, well, maybe there's a bomb on this plane. And he just goes, bomb, 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 in the movie. So, anyway, does this change for you, the aisle seat, if that's the risk where you bring on the carry-on bag and they're going to make you check it because they're going to get everyone in on the window first and then the middle seat as well?
No, because gate checking a bag isn't a problem, right? Worst case scenario, you gate check it, and then they bring it. Usually, the gate check bags don't go to the carousel. The gate check bags, they just bring up and you get off.
Sometimes. They
Sure.
tell you it will be right there at the gate when you get off the plane, and then they go, oh, actually, it's at Carousel 47.
And listen, worst case, it's at the carousel. I love the idea of incentivizing middle seat sitters as opposed to not incentivizing them. I don't think that this is the incentive that's going to work for me. Now, if you were to say, because, hey, you get in the plane sooner so you don't have to check your bag, but now you're sitting in your seat longer. Right? I always like to board the plane at the very end.
That's a great point.
Because I don't want to sit there. The longer you're on it, the longer you're sitting.
You know what? I would actually rather have to check my bag at the gate.
Yes.
Than sit on the plane
longer
when the AC isn't working right when that plane starts.
Yeah.
And then it takes 45 minutes to board.
And then you
sit
sit down, and
you
the guy in
got
the
to
aisle
stand
has
up.
to sit down after you, and then you're just up and down and back and forth. But I like the idea of incentivizing. How about giving people like free Wi-Fi, free movies, free snacks,
come
a free
on.
drink, something. Give them free XYZ.
Well, we know Spirit on Frontier
to
won't do
incentivize
that.
for the middle seat.
Those airlines, they charge you to like breathe on the plane too. And it's like they charge $7-8 now for AirPods too, or earbuds on an airplane. Like I forgot my earbuds last time I flew. I had to pay $7 or $8 to be able to watch some TV on a plane.
I remember complaining about how bad the meals were on planes. Now you don't even get a meal to complain about.
You got to fly first class.
Yeah, but those meals have always been pretty good.
Yeah, the first class meals are good. So I've only flew first class a few times, and it's just cheap for whatever reason when I go visit my sister in Colorado. And if I take a red eye, I want to sleep a little bit. And they give you like a pretty good gourmet burger on the airlines. Anyway, let's get to the Dallas Cowboys. I did not think we would spend 12 minutes on airlines, but I was reading that story, and I'm like, I wonder if people listening are now going to change the way on their seat preference if they fly United, because now they're going to start boarding in a week when you're in economy class, which most of us do fly economy. The window seat first, then the middle seat, and then eventually they will board the aisle seat as well. So now I'm going to get shamed on them in the airport because like all of us large people that like to sit in the aisle, where they're going to be like, oh, you're the aisle people. You're the people that pack a few extra pounds, and now we have to wait until you go sit your fat ass down. Well, I sound like Pharrell there for a second. Fat ass! You go sit your fat ass down in the aisle. Anyway, though, the Cowboys last night. Everything goes back to the Cowboys. If you've never listened to a national radio show before and you hear, all they do is talk about the Cowboys, after 12 minutes of the aisle, middle, and window, we go back to the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys, what they did last night does not change my perception of them whatsoever. I know you Cowboys fans, you cockroaches, you pop up after a win. We don't hear from you after a loss. And all you do is you sit there and you go, see, here come the Cowboys. The Cowboys are a good team. The Cowboys were lucky that they were going up against the Chargers last night. Because the Cowboys are like the definition of the team that chokes. But then the Chargers somehow do it even better. Where chargering is actually worse, even though in this case we're going to use it as better in terms of who's going to mess it up more, than the Cowboys choking. Like, at least the Cowboys will get to the divisional round of the playoffs. They'll get there. Where the Chargers, sure, when Phillip Rivers was there, they win a playoff game. One year they got to that AFC Championship game when everyone got hurt. But now under Brandon Staley, last year they made the playoffs. Then they showed up in the playoffs for a half and then didn't get the job done in the second half. But last night, that was like a seesaw ride, or it's actually more of a staring contest of who was going to blink first and who was going to mess up the game first. And there were so many moments where the Cowboys were begging the Chargers to go win the game. The punt, where it got muffed, and then the Chargers were like, oh, we're going to wait till 4th and goal to go score a touchdown. Then late in the game when the Cowboys are driving, 3rd and long, up, penalty, bailed out the Dallas Cowboys. The Chargers 2 defensive penalties where they accepted one of them. And then the Cowboys, Dak Prescott, Tony Pollard, they couldn't connect. They had a wide open touchdown. They had to settle for the field goal. And the Chargers offensive line played 56, 57 minutes of really good football. But then in the biggest moment, Micah Parsons stepped up, right? The announcer's like, oh, the Cowboys haven't got a sack all throughout the game. And then Micah Parsons started to look like Lawrence Taylor once again. And Justin Herbert then throws the interception to Stephon Gilmore, the former Defensive Player of the Year. So last night, my takeaway, when I look at the Cowboys and the Chargers, it's not, oh, wow, the Cowboys are back. Oh, wow, the Cowboys are a force. It's more so the incompetence of the Chargers, and it's more so Brandon Staley's not the guy, Kellen Moore's not the guy, and they need a new coach to try to get the best of this talent. And there is blame to go around with the players, but it's always going to get excused until they get the right coach in there. Because everyone knows Brandon Staley is not the right coach. The way you look at the Cowboys is very simply this. The Cowboys are going to win games. The Cowboys have won games the last 2 years. They went back-to-back 12-win seasons. But when the games get big, when there's actually pressure, when there's actually an expectation on the Cowboys, what happened 2 weeks ago is the real Dallas Cowboys. We're up against the better teams. They fail. Like, they're not going in a big spot. Like, they may beat the Eagles once in the regular season. They play the Eagles well. But if they meet the Eagles in the playoff time, the Eagles will beat the Cowboys. If the Cowboys have to go play the 49ers in playoff time, the 49ers win. Heck, if the Cowboys had to play the Lions tomorrow in a playoff game, I would absolutely bite off some kneecaps with Dan Campbell. The Cowboys try to play the role of a dominant team, but they don't ever translate to a dominant team in the big moments. And the Cowboys last night could beat a team that they're slightly better than, like the Chargers, but when you pick up the competition and when you pick up the intensity, they're going to get exposed. I say this all the time about the Cowboys. The Cowboys are the Ferrari in the driveway. They're the nice luxury car in the driveway. And everyone's like, oh, you have this car. Oh, you have that car. Where the brand recognition is so big and you just think, oh, it's a great car. But what good is a great car when the front tire's flat, you have no gas in the tank, and then, oh, yeah, Samter, had a little road rage, and he said, I'm going to go smash in the windshield as well, and your windshield wipers are broken. Because that's what the Cowboys are. They look like a dominant team. They look like they could be a really damn good team. But the car just can't drive in the big moments because the car has suffered way too much damage. All right, we'll take a break here on the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. We'll come on back with a little overreaction, proper reaction.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 4 minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. .45 seconds remaining. .30 seconds remaining. .15 seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Another NFL week is complete, which means it's another week to freak out about your favorite team. Which takes are truly crazy.
But sometimes a game can be so bad, it's almost good. You know what I'm saying? No.
And which are so crazy, they might be right.
He's 6'5", he's 245 pounds. He's probably a Popeye's biscuit away from being a tight end.
Zach lets you know in this week's edition of Overreaction or Proper Reaction.
All righty, Big Mike CBS. Michael Samter, what do you got for me today, pal?
All right, well, the first one, the Seattle Seahawks dropped to 3-2 after a 17-13 loss to the Bengals on Sunday. Geno Smith threw for over 300 yards, but didn't have a touchdown and tossed 2 picks. After the game, Geno took the blame.
I felt like the guys deserved to win today. Obviously, I didn't, do my best job today, to get that done. So, those are things that, I put on myself. I lay it right at my feet, right on my shoulders, and I look forward to the next opportunity.
So overreaction, proper reaction. The Seahawks need a new starting quarterback in 2024.
So you look at the structure of the deal. The dead cap next year, if they wanted to move on from after this one season, would be $17.4 million. A few years ago, it'd be like, oh, you can't do that. Now, with some of the quarterbacks that got traded and their dead cap money was significantly bigger than that, that's not that bad. So they could find a way to get out of that deal if they wanted to after one season. I don't think Geno, though, has played poorly enough where right now I'm ready to say they have to move on. I think it's something you monitor. I think it's something you watch year to year because a lot of people look at Geno Smith and said, oh, maybe it was a one-time wonder thing and a one-hit wonder with what he was able to do last year. And there's a lot of questions if he can continue to do it. So you monitor it, but I'm not ready to say that the Seahawks need a new starting quarterback in 2024 right now, so I'll go overreaction.
The Lions, as we've talked about, are 5-1 as Jared Goff has 11 touchdowns and just 3 picks. He's 13-3 over his last 16 games dating back to last season.
Holy smokes, that's something.
And the crazy thing is those 3 interceptions this year are his only 3 interceptions in those last 16 games.
Oh, is that right?
Yes. Overreaction, proper reaction. Jared Goff is the Lions' long-term franchise quarterback.
When they traded for him, I thought that was just a placeholder. I never thought Jared Goff would get a long-term extension by the Detroit Lions. And even the Lions were even skeptical of it. Because really, they got 1 first-round pick for Stafford, and then they got another first-round pick for acquiring the contract of Jared Goff. And the Lions still haven't extended him. And they drafted Hendon Hooker, so even they had some questions about Jared Goff. But Jared Goff continues to show that he's the man in Detroit. And when you're the Lions and you've had this success, I think you need to learn from what happened the last time you had a decent team with Jim Caldwell as the coach. You thought you need to get rid of Caldwell and bring in a new coach to make you great, and Matt Patricia, and how'd that work out? Oh, yeah, it was a disaster. So if Goff continues to play this way, you reward him with the new contract. He's your guy, and he's a good quarterback, and I'm not afraid to say he's a good quarterback. A lot of people are like, it's Jared Goff. Yeah, he's solid. He's fine. No, the guy is a good quarterback. And that is a proper reaction. You ask me, Jared Goff is the Lions' long-term franchise QB.
Now, the Pats are a mess and whispers of this being Belichick's last season
That's
in
actually
New England.
a nice way of saying it. The Patriots are a dumpster fire right now. Not just a mess. Like a mess is, oh, I spilled my coffee. We got to go clean it up. It would be as if I walked into our Dunkin' Donuts coffee lounge here at CBS Sports Radio inside the Odyssey family, and I'm making the coffee, and I spilled the entire pot of coffee and then the other 3 pots that are right next to it as well. That's what the Patriots are right now. The entire store is flooded, and they're like, oh, let me get out of here because this team bleeping stinks right now.
Spoken like a very objective, non-biased Patriots fan right there. It seems like there's no emotion behind it. You don't feel like you're upset in any way, shape, or form. Well, one guy who might want to get out of this dumpster fire is Bill Belichick.
He created it.
Yesterday,
that's like if I spilled a coffee and then I'm like, oh, it wasn't me. Let me run out of the store. Not my problem.
I did walk in there the other day and saw some coffee stains, so I'm wondering who that may have been from. Now I think I have my answer.
Like Shaggy would say, wasn't me.
Uh-huh. Well, yesterday, Belichick's former favorite linebacker, Teddy Bruschi, was asked if Belichick could retire after the season.
I think Bill Belichick is considering it, and I also think Robert Kraft is the one that has to start to consider, is it time to move on? Because I have always known Bill to only coach for meaningful wins. Meaningful in terms of division championships, playoff wins, Super Bowls. It's shifted now. The meaningful wins are now all for him. All right? It's for the Shula mark. Because if it is, we really got to look in the mirror and say, where are we going in the future?
So overreaction, proper reaction. This is Belichick's last year, not just with the Pats, but as an NFL head coach.
It could be his final year with the Patriots. I still believe he will be back. But I think Belichick will coach again if the Patriots do move on from him. So when you say this is Belichick's last year as an NFL head coach, I think that's an overreaction. Because if the Crafts traded him, or excuse me, if the Crafts wanted to fire him or move on from him, I do think another team would pick him up and would hand the reins over to a guy that won 6 Super Bowls in the NFL as a head coach. So this is Belichick's last year as an NFL head coach. I will go that's an overreaction.
So all eyes were on Aaron Rodgers on Sunday as he was seen throwing the ball on the sideline just 5 weeks after his Achilles injury.
That's wild.
This afternoon, Rodgers joined the Pat McAfee Show and discussed how it felt to be back on the field.
I really felt great. I had just a little bit of a limp. I'm just not quite walking perfectly normal. But standing and throwing is not a problem. Moving in a small little area was not a problem. And I was excited to get back out there. And again, it just felt a little bit more normal.
So overreaction, proper reaction. Aaron Rodgers will play again in the 2023 season.
So I think we could have two different conversations here. Conversation one, I think we could all acknowledge that Aaron Rodgers is a different human being. If I had this Achilles injury, I'd be milking this as long as possible, and I'd be waiting as long as possible to return to work and being like a good teammate member, or even thinking about doing something physical. Now, with that being said, as impressive as it is what Rodgers is already doing, until I see him play in a game and start in a game again this season, yeah, I'm still going to believe that it's more likely that it won't happen than it will happen. And I would still be shocked if he plays again. But he seems motivated. He seems committed to it. And he's not ruling it out. And that's wild. But when you say Aaron Rodgers will play again in 2023, I will go overreaction.
So 2023 has been a wild ride for the 3 first-round rookie quarterbacks. In Indy, Anthony Richardson is expected to have season-ending shoulder surgery. That's always tough. Shoulder surgery.
Yeah, say that 10 times fast.
Yeah, I can barely do it once. In Carolina, Frank Reich is giving up play-calling duties to OC Thomas Brown. And in Houston, as we've talked about, C.J. Stroud has thrown 9 touchdowns to just 1 pick for the surprising 3-3 Texans. So overreaction, proper reaction, Stroud will have the best career of the 3 rookie quarterbacks.
I actually think that's a proper reaction, and here's why. Bryce Young, I feel, is destined to get failed by the Carolina Panthers. I don't trust David Tepper. I think David Tepper is one of the worst owners in football. And then when you look at Anthony Richardson, it's a small sample size, but it's pretty damaging how many injuries we're now talking about a few games into a career. And there was already questions about how good Richardson can be. He was the highest ceiling guy in this draft where he didn't show it on the field yet, but everyone talked about that's what this guy could potentially do if he put it all together. And C.J. Stroud, we always knew was going to be solid. We knew he was going to be good. The question was, can he become great? And so far, he's elevating that franchise and moving that franchise in the right direction. So I will go on to say proper reaction. Stroud will end up having the best career of the 3 rookie QBs that are playing right now in the NFL.
All right, last one. We all had high expectations for the Bengals, and they finally evened their record to 3-3 with back-to-back wins over the Cardinals and Seahawks. However, offensive coordinator Brian Callahan admitted he was, quote, fuming while he was watching the offensive tape after the game. So overreaction, proper reaction. Now that the Bengals are back to even, are they still a top 3 team in the AFC?
Well, yeah, and it wasn't just Callahan. After the game, I would say that Joe Burrow was fuming, but Joe Burrow sounded as if he just lost his dog or something. It was so sad. It was like if a kid on Christmas didn't get the gift that he wanted with how bad that they were playing in the second half. It honestly, when I was listening to Burrow on Eye on Football, it sounded like I was at a funeral. That's how somber of a tone Burrow had in the second half. Where he's like, yeah, you take the win, but man, I'm not happy with the way that we played in the second half. So I appreciate that, even in a win, knowing that you got to clean things up. And when you're trying to turn this team around and get this team back moving in the right direction, I don't think you just celebrate every win and make it seem as if everything's fixed. There's still a lot of work to do with the Cincinnati Bengals. Right now, I would say overreaction. When you ask me if the Bengals are still a top 3 team in the AFC, they could maybe get there towards the end of the season. But right now, Kansas City's better. And I know the Bengals have played really well up against Kansas City the last 2 years. The Miami Dolphins are better, just for starters. And then that third team, that's the tough one. Because the Jaguars have been up and down. The Ravens have been up and down. The Buffalo Bills have been up and down as well. But I would probably still say it's the Bills. But I would hold my nose when I do that. The Dolphins and Chiefs through the first 6 weeks of the season, they're the 2 best teams, in my opinion, in the AFC. They're fighting for that 3rd spot. But for Cincinnati, yeah, you clean things up, get into 3-3. You get a bye week, but now you're going up against San Francisco and Buffalo. There's still work to do for the Cincinnati Bengals, where it could be actually something good that they got off to the slow start because their defense is getting a lot of shine. Their defense played a heck of a game last week up against the Seahawks. It is the reason why they won the game. But offensively, they got work to do. And on this offense, they have a lot of talent, and you'd think it would eventually start to turn around. Like, look at Kansas City. Their offense hasn't even played their best game yet, and their defense is shining. So the Chiefs and Bengals a little bit more similar than what we think, but the Bengals did dig themselves into a deep hole right out of the gate. 855-212-4CBS, 855-212-4227. You could always give me a follow Instagram and Twitter at Zach Gelb. Let me go quickly to Charles in Minnesota, next up on the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. Charles, what's happening?
What's up, Zach?
Doing fantastic. What do you got for me?
I just couldn't believe how, Brandon Staley and the Chargers blunder, repeatedly blunder and give the game away, basically. I mean, the Cowboys, to their credit, did what they had to do, just squeak by and get a win, but really it was given away. I mean, it was just unbelievable. And I'm wondering, how long are you going, what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. When are they going to can this guy? That ownership is lousy. I mean, lousy.
It really is a lousy ownership group, and you could make the case, and thanks for the phone call, Charles, that they should have fired him at the end of last season, but you knew the standard in Los Angeles last year was just make the playoffs, and then Brandon Staley would come back. So you make the playoffs, and then you're cruising to a victory, and you have an all-time bad choke job in the postseason, and you end up losing that playoff game when it was a lock at halftime that you were going to be in the second round and playing in that divisional round. I would have fired him after that game, but you knew the Spanos family with how much money they owe Brandon Staley with the contract that they gave him, that he was going to be back for the third season. But now I don't think it's a matter of if he gets fired. It's just a matter of when he's going to get fired, because there's no justification to bringing him back anymore, because you change coordinators. The offense still is a mess, and the offense has regressed. Like, at least they used to, put up a lot of points in this game, and then they just wouldn't find a way, like how they did in week 1 against the Dolphins, to be able to make a stop. And also, Brandon Staley made a name for himself being the defensive coordinator in this league with the Rams, and the defense in Los Angeles with the Chargers has been horrible this year. So they're not doing anything well. And this was another game where they looked right at the Cowboys, very similar teams. Cowboys are better than the Chargers slightly, but both those teams don't know how to close games and close big games. And the Cowboys are better than the Chargers, and that showed last night, where both teams made an incredible amount of mistakes and an abundance of mistakes, and ultimately the Cowboys made fewer mistakes than the Chargers. But it's a shame because the Chargers have so much talent, and if they continue with this nonsense of Staley, you're just wasting a window here, because you just paid Herbert. You're going to lose some talent. Keenan Allen's only getting older, even though he's still a really good wide receiver in this league. And they've had a core that's been good enough on paper, but it's not translating onto the field. And I don't know how much longer their window's open. And they need a new coach to actually see this team go to the level that they want. Because Staley, maybe one day this guy, with how positively some people talk about him, maybe one day he goes on to be a good head coach. But right now, he's not ready for the job. And he shows it week in and week out. Where usually in this world, we don't agree on a lot of things. If we put up a poll right now, is Brandon Staley a good head coach? Is Brandon Staley a coach that you could one day believe in? I would say 95% of the people would say no. And the only 5% that would say yes are people trolling or just being different for the sake of being different. The guy's a terrible coach. I would fire him right now. I don't think the Spanos family is going to do that. But you need to create change in that organization. You need to bring in someone else, because they have too much talent to continue to have these poor efforts and these poor performances and results over and over and over again. Zach Gelb Show, CBS Sports Radio. We'll take a break. Something that I can't believe that was done by one coach, and another college coach that I can't believe said something as well. And also a thought on a dream Super Bowl matchup coming up at the end of the year in Vegas. So we got 3 more things to get to, 1 more segment to play. Zach Gelb here with you on CBS Sports Radio. We'll get an update, though, first with the Act Man, Rich Ackerman.
CBS Sports Radio. Sports Flag.
Well, NFL owners reportedly voted unanimously to delay in-person head coaching interviews for candidates employed by NFL teams until after the divisional round of the playoffs. Hall of Famer Terrell Owens okay after reportedly being hit by a car. The incident occurred following a dispute in a pickup basketball game with the other person involved allegedly getting into his car, driving toward Owens, hitting his knee. Owens did not need medical attention. Julio Jones now on his fourth team in 4 years, signing a 1-year deal with the Eagles, where he's reunited with former teammate A.J. Brown in Philly. The Diamondbacks rolled past 2 division winners to get to the league championship series, sweeping both the Brewers and Dodgers, but they dropped Game 1 last night in Philly for their first loss of this year's playoffs. They'll try to even the series tonight with 12-game winner Merrill Kelly on the mound. The 35-year-old righty was terrific in his previous start in the division series, throwing 6 1/3 scoreless innings, allowing just 3 hits. 12-game winner Aaron Nola will start for the Phils, and the Rockets have reportedly dealt Kevin Porter Jr. to the Oklahoma City Thunder, who are going to waive him. OKC also gets a pair of second-round picks, while Houston gets Victor Oladipo and Jeremiah Robinson Earl. I'm Rich Eckham.
Jim Rome here. Coming up Wednesday in the Jungle, a conversation with Pacers head coach Rick Carlisle. See you Wednesday at 12 noon Eastern and 9 Pacific.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. 1 minute remaining. Five seconds remaining. Seconds remaining. Seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Hey, this is Howie. And this is Nick from the Backstreet Boys. And you're listening to the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. And guess what? Zach is back. All right.
He's live. He's nationwide on CBS Sports Radio. This is the Zach Gelb Show.
So Shane Beamer in his first 2 years with the Gamecocks of South Carolina has done a good job. This year, though, they've been a team that's been disappointing. Where I've said this all throughout the year so far that LSU is the most disappointing team in college football because there was so much higher expectations for LSU than compared to South Carolina. But South Carolina has been disappointing. And Spencer Rattler played a really good game up against Florida, and you lose in a shootout 41-39. The week before that, you lose to Tennessee, or 2 weeks before that, you lose to Tennessee 41-20. And your wins this year, as you're sitting at 2-4 through the first 6 games of the season, Mississippi State, you beat them by 7, and then you beat Furman. So you didn't show up against UNC to start off the year. You then played Georgia well for a half, and then the talent of Georgia prevailed over you in the second half. And you beat Mississippi State, and you lose to Tennessee and Florida. It's going to be tough to make this look like it's a good season for South Carolina the rest of the way. Now, last year they started off 1-2, but you played Arkansas and Georgia. And then you found a way to move things back in the right direction and save the ship from sinking, get into 5-2 after a big win against Kentucky, a big win up against A&M. You lose to Missouri, and then you win, you lose Vanderbilt, Florida, but then at the end of the year, you beat big programs inside the top 10. You beat Tennessee, you beat Clemson, and then you were right there. You lost in the bowl game to Notre Dame, and like you walk away, you go, hey, 8-5 season. It's pretty damn good. And it showed consistency with Shane Beamer, who the year before that went 7-6. So this year, it's been really ugly to start, and you needed to find a way to win one of these games against Tennessee and Florida, and you lost both of them. Well, not only did Shane Beamer lose, he also broke his foot during the Florida game. So think about this embarrassment. You have now back-to-back losses in a season, 6 games in, you only have 2 wins, and it's up against Furman and Mississippi State. So if you even want to call those wins, be my guest. And then in frustration, in the craziness of the Florida game, you break your foot. Here is Shane Beamer on how he broke his foot.
Saturday after the game, I broke my foot. Certainly that was a gut-wrenching emotional loss, and I was frustrated and kicked something that I shouldn't have kicked, and thought I was okay, but adrenaline of the game wore off, and don't think I have to have surgery, but there is a broken bone in my foot. It hurts like you know what, but, I've got to show toughness and fight through it.
Show toughness? Coach, I'm a Shane Beamer fan. Don't be an idiot. You lost the game. I understand and I respect you being upset. You should be. You're passionate. That's why a lot of people like you, because you're passionate. But you're a leader of a program. You're not a coordinator anymore. You're a CEO. You can't be breaking your foot out of frustration because the game didn't go your way. Because it's weird to say it this way, but that's how you end up losing your job. Not because of the act, but because it makes it a clown show. Where now, if you just lose to Florida, I don't know how many people are slamming Shane Beamer nationally. Not a lot. But now it's like, oh, did you see Shane Beamer? Look at that hothead. Not only is his team underperforming, he breaks his foot because he was annoyed with what happened during the game. It just adds to a circus atmosphere this year. Where the first 2 years, it was cruising. It was really good. You're making that trajectory of doing a really good job at South Carolina. And now in the first moments of adversity and the first legit moments of adversity, you act like a toddler and you kick something and you break your foot and then you talk about like toughness here. And I wonder how this was revealed. Like, did he just show up to the podium with a boot on or something? Or a bandage, like, oh, coach, how'd you break your foot? And then he admitted it? You know, I don't think I'd be owning that one of, yeah, I got frustrated after the game and I kicked something, and when the adrenaline wore off, I realized I did break a bone in my foot. But look at me, I'm a tough guy. You know, we preach toughness in this program. We got to be tough. And I've not heard the audio of this yet, but I was reading this, and it's via On3, so they're very trusted. Dabo Swinney on the bandwagon Clemson fans. And if you know me, I'm very tired of the arrogant Dabo Swinney. I'm very tired of the preacher, Dabo Swinney, who everything he does, oh, it's wonderful. He's unbelievable. Shame on people for embracing NIL and the transfer portal, all things he's failed to do. Like, Dabo's become so insufferable because they're no longer winning national championships. Not even getting the college football playoff. Sure, you won the ACC last year, but you didn't make the college football playoff. That's the standard at Clemson. To Dabo's credit, what he's built at that program. But the last 2-3 years, you know, he was the first one to take bows when things were going well, but now when things aren't going well, he feels as if he's on a higher throne and he could talk down to all of us. So he picked a battle with the fans that he thinks are bandwagon fans. We're at a point in our time, if you don't go undefeated, you're losers. You're terrible. Maybe we need to lose a few games and lighten up the bandwagon. Sometimes the bandwagon can get a little too full. Oh, my God. Dabo, you're that concerned what people are saying about you when you have a season already of 2 losses where you didn't show up against Duke and then tried to say, oh, well, we had 200 yards passing, 200 yards rushing. We do that. You know, we're going to be a pretty damn good football team. And we won't lose another game the rest of the year. And you had the Florida State game won, and you messed it up down the stretch. So now since people are starting to turn on you because they expect a certain standard, you're going to go after your fans? That's weak, that's gutless, that's pathetic by Dabo Swinney. And it just further enhances my dislike for him in the last 2 years that's starting to grow. Not only grow exponentially, grow through the roof. Right through the roof. Oh, man, he's insufferable. You know, Mario Cristobal plays him this weekend. I hope Mario beats him 45-0, and does not call off the dogs. But, you know, coach, maybe actually Mario Cristobal, you take a few kneel downs because we all remember what happened 2 weeks ago when you ran the ball and then you ended up losing the game. So I can't trust either of those programs right now. And then finally, here's a dream Super Bowl matchup. I think right now, when we get ready to go to Super Bowl at the end of the year, the 2 teams I want to see get there. In the NFC, it's the Detroit Lions. Absolutely. Imagine Dan Campbell, Jared Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown, David Montgomery, Aiden Hutchinson, Alex Anzalone in the Super Bowl. Imagine Dan Campbell at media night. And then going up against Mike McDaniel, who's just as equally entertaining, and his Miami Dolphins team that has Tua Tagovailoa, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, well, Samter out like Radio Row, waddling like a penguin and doing that dance. I absolutely love that celebration. And you need Jalen Phillips back because Jalen Phillips is a big-time difference maker for them on the defense side of the ball. And you have Christian Wilkins, who's just a dominant defensive player from Clemson, back when Clemson actually won some things. And Dabo loved the bandwagon that was growing then, and now all of a sudden hates the bandwagon. And Jalen Ramsey may be getting back into the mix too. That would be such a fun Super Bowl with the offenses that both those teams have. That would be one of your like 41-38 type of Super Bowls where it's just an incredible offensive game. And for the first time in a long time, you can make a realistic case for the Dolphins to get there and a realistic case for the Lions to get there. And yes, the Lions, haven't won the division since 1993 and haven't won a playoff game since 1991. But through 6 weeks of the season, entering week 7, Lions fans could dream big, and Dolphin fans could dream big as well. Great show today. Big thanks to Michael Samter, Stuart Kovacs, each and every one of you for calling and listening to the show. You could always follow me on social media at Zach Gelb, Twitter and Instagram. Big thanks to all participating in the YouTube chat as well. I'm off tomorrow, but back Thursday and Friday right here on CBS Sports Radio from 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern. We out. Bye-bye. Peace.